A lost city sleeps beneath the waves, its story a ghost in our collective memory. Ancient legends are humanity's first and most thrilling attempts to make sense of a world filled with mystery. They are the maps we drew for the uncharted territories of existence, born from wonder, fear, and an insatiable curiosity. We are about to embark on a monumental journey to uncover 50 of these incredible tales, from sunken empires and golden cities to creatures that stalk the remote corners of the earth. By the end, you'll possess a treasure trove of the world's greatest unsolved enigmas. We will ask what truth lies behind the myth of a continent that vanished into the sea, and why a simple fountain became an obsession that drove kings to ruin. What forgotten story from the ancient world calls to you most? Our journey begins not in the murky depths of the ocean, but in the sun-drenched courtyards of ancient Greece. It was here, over 2,000 years ago, that the philosopher Plato first gave the world a story that would never let it go. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he describes a formidable naval power called Atlantis, a kingdom of immense wealth and sophistication that lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Plato paints a vivid picture of its capital city, a marvel of engineering with concentric rings of land and water, bridged by canals and tunnels large enough for triremes to pass. This was a civilization that possessed technology and knowledge far beyond its time, a society of unparalleled power. But then, in a single day and night of misfortune, the entire island was swallowed by the sea and vanished. For Plato, this cataclysm was not just a geological event, it was a moral one. The Atlanteans, once a virtuous people, had become corrupt, their hearts filled with hubris and a desire to conquer. Their sinking was a divine punishment, a warning from history about the dangers of pride. This core idea of a lost utopia brought low by its own ambition is what gives the legend its enduring power. But where was this fabled empire? For centuries, scholars and adventurers have scoured the globe for clues. Some point to the Mediterranean, suggesting the Minoan civilization on Crete, whose palaces were devastated by the colossal volcanic eruption on the island of Thera. Others look to the Caribbean, the Azores, or even Antarctica, each theory supported by its own tantalizing, if inconclusive, evidence. Imagine ancient maps marked with phantom islands, modern sonar scans revealing strange formations on the seafloor, and artists' reconstructions of a city gleaming with golden temples and bustling harbors. The search for Atlantis is more than a treasure hunt. It is a quest to find an echo of ourselves, a reflection of our own fears about the heights of our achievement and the depths of our potential fall. That same human fear of loss, the dread of time's relentless march, gave rise to another legend just as powerful as a sunken city. While Atlantis speaks to the fall of empires, the Fountain of Youth whispers a far more personal promise, the dream of turning back the clock on life itself. This was no grand kingdom, but a simple spring whose waters could restore youth and vitality to anyone who drank from it. The legend's roots are ancient, appearing in the tales of Prester John, a mythical Christian king ruling a paradise in the east, a land overflowing with marvels including a spring that defied age. But the story found its most famous champion in the early 16th century with the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon. Enticed by rumors from the indigenous people of the Caribbean, he mounted an expedition north, eventually landing on the lush coast of Florida. While he never officially stated his goal was the fountain, the historical record strongly suggests he was actively searching for this miraculous water, a quest that would forever tie his name to the myth. Think of the sheer determination, the image of armored conquistadors pushing through humid swamps and tangled mangroves, not for immediate gold, but for a prize far more abstract and profound. The Fountain of Youth is perhaps the purest symbol of our deepest anxieties, our terror of decay and death, and our desperate, timeless desire for a second chance. This was not mere vanity, it was a battle against the most fundamental law of nature. the legend did not die with the age of exploration. In the 20th century, stories resurfaced claiming the fountain was located in the waters near Bimini in the Bahamas, leading to new waves of hopeful seekers with their own maps and diving equipment. From Shakespeare's plays to modern films, the idea continues to captivate, proving that the thirst for eternal youth is a story we are never finished telling. The quest for eternal youth reveals a deep human longing, but it was a different kind of desire that sent armies of men into the steamy jungles of South America, a hunger not for more years but for unimaginable wealth. This is the legend of El Dorado, a story that began not as a place but as a man. High in the Andes of modern Colombia, the Muisca people practiced a breathtaking ritual for a new leader. They would cover their chieftain from head to toe in gold dust, transforming him into a living, breathing statue of a god. He was El Dorado, the Golden One. Accompanied by priests and nobles on a raft piled high with gold and emeralds, they would row to the center of the sacred lake Guatavita. As the crowd cheered from the shores, the Golden Man would plunge into the cold, dark waters, washing the precious dust from his body as an offering to the gods, while the treasures were cast into the lake's depths. This was a spiritual ceremony, a pact between a people and their deities. But when Spanish conquistadors, already dizzy with the gold they had plundered from the Aztecs and Incas, heard whispers of this ritual, they misunderstood. They took the name of the man and applied it to his kingdom, then to his city, and finally they dreamed of an entire empire paved with gold. The legend grew with every retelling, becoming a phantom that danced just beyond the next mountain range. Fueled by this fantasy, expeditions of thousands of men, like the tragic journey of Gonzalo Pizarro, vanished into the green hell of the Amazon basin. They followed rivers that promised golden cities at their source, only to find disease, starvation, and hostile tribes. The search for El Dorado became a driving force behind the European mapping and colonization of the South American interior, a relentless push into the unknown fueled by a mirage. This golden dream had a devastating cost. Indigenous populations were enslaved, tortured for information, and wiped out by foreign diseases, all for a secret that was never a city of gold, but a single, shimmering man performing a sacred rite. The true treasure of El Dorado was never found because it was never a place to be discovered. It was a moment in time, a ritual of faith that sank into a mountain lake and left behind only a ghost that would haunt the world for centuries. While conquistadors searched for El Dorado in the West, a different kind of legend captured the imagination of medieval Europe, a story of a lost Christian kingdom shining like a beacon in the distant, unknown East. For centuries, the lands beyond the Mediterranean were a realm of mystery and fear, dominated by powerful Islamic empires and pagan tribes. Into this void stepped the magnificent legend of Prester John. He was said to be a king and a priest, a direct descendant of one of the three magi, ruling a kingdom of immense piety and staggering wealth, a utopia hidden somewhere beyond the reach of the Crusaders. Then, in the 12th century, a document began to circulate through the courts of Europe, a letter addressed to the Byzantine emperor, purportedly from Prester John himself. This forged letter, copied and recopied by scribes, described a paradise on earth. It spoke of a land where peace and justice prevailed, where honey flowed freely and pepper grew in abundance. The kingdom was populated by strange and wonderful creatures, like men with the heads of dogs, giants, and phoenixes. It even claimed to contain the Fountain of Youth, a detail that would later inspire explorers like Ponce de Leon. This letter was a masterwork of fantasy, offering a tantalizing vision of a powerful Christian ally who could help turn the tide against the forces of Islam. As European mapmakers tried to pin down this paradise, the location of Prester John's kingdom proved frustratingly fluid. At first, he was placed in India, a land already rich with fable. Then, as knowledge grew, he was pushed further into Central Asia. Finally, as contact with the African continent increased, the legend settled firmly in the highlands of Ethiopia, a real Christian kingdom that had been isolated from Europe for centuries. This shifting geography shows how the legend was a mirror reflecting Europe's expanding, yet still incomplete, understanding of the world. The dream of finding Prester John was not just a fanciful tale, it was a powerful engine for exploration. When the Portuguese Prince Henry the Navigator sent his caravels down the coast of Africa, he instructed his captains to seek out this Christian king. The great explorer Vasco da Gama, upon rounding the Cape of Good Hope and entering the Indian Ocean, explicitly asked the merchants he met if they knew the way to the lands of Prester John. He hoped to forge an alliance that would encircle their mutual enemies. Visualize the illuminated manuscripts of the time, their pages filled with intricate drawings of this mythical kingdom, depicting a regal Prester John on his throne alongside griffins and other fantastical beasts. This persistent legend reveals a profound truth that sometimes the most powerful maps are not drawn to scale, but are charted by hope and the desperate need for a friend in a vast, unfamiliar world. But the hope for a distant Christian ally was not the only spiritual quest to capture the medieval mind. A far more personal and sacred object of desire was waiting to be found, one that promised not an alliance but a direct connection to the divine. This is the legend of the Holy Grail. Unlike the sprawling kingdom of Prester John, the Grail began its life in story as a mysterious, otherworldly vessel. Its first major appearance comes from the French poet Chrétien de Troyes near the end of the 12th century, in his unfinished romance Percival. In this tale, the young knight Percival witnesses a strange procession in a castle where a beautiful maiden carries a graal, a word that simply meant a wide serving dish. This graal is radiant, made of fine gold and studded with jewels, and it carries a single communion wafer that sustains the life of a wounded king. Chrétien never calls it holy, and he never finished the story, leaving the graal's true nature a tantalizing mystery. It was another poet, Robert de Boron, who a few years later firmly Christianized the legend. In his work, the Grail becomes the very chalice used by Jesus Christ at the Last Supper. This was the cup that caught his blood at the crucifixion, making it the most sacred relic in the world. From that moment, the Grail was transformed from a magical platter into a physical piece of divine history, and the quest to find it became the highest spiritual calling for a knight. The search was no longer for a magical cure, but for a direct experience of God's grace. This quest defined the knights of King Arthur's Round Table, with the pure Sir Galahad ultimately achieving the vision of the Grail, a moment of such profound holiness that he was taken up to heaven. The Grail's power, however, was not just in its history. It became a deeply symbolic object representing spiritual enlightenment, a goal that could only be reached by a knight of perfect purity and faith. Its allure was so strong that it spawned countless theories about its true nature and hiding place. Some whispered it was not a cup at all, but a secret, perhaps even the sacred bloodline of Christ himself, protected for centuries by groups like the Cathars in southern France. Others pointed to the mysterious Knights Templar, suggesting the powerful military order had discovered the relic during the Crusades and brought its secret back to Europe. This idea has fueled modern stories from Indiana Jones to the Da Vinci Code, proving the legend's enduring grip on our imagination. You can almost see the medieval tapestries depicting the noble knights on their journey, the illuminated manuscript showing a radiant chalice, and the misty slopes of Glastonbury Tor in England, long rumored to be the mythical Isle of Avalon and a potential resting place for the sacred vessel. The Grail endures because it answers a fundamental human yearning, the desire to touch the divine, to find proof of grace in a physical world, and to undertake a journey that is as much about transforming the self as it is about finding any object. Yet the search for divine grace in the form of a cup could not compete with a more worldly temptation, the glittering promise of gold that lured men across an ocean. As the legend of El Dorado simmered in the south, a new and equally potent myth ignited in the north, the tale of the 7 cities of gold. This story began with a shipwreck and a whisper. In the 1530s, a Spanish ship foundered off the coast of what is now Texas, and among the few survivors was a Moorish slave named Esteban de Durantes. For years, he and 3 companions trekked across the harsh landscape, living with various indigenous groups. When Esteban finally reached Spanish outposts in Mexico, he brought with him astonishing tales. He spoke of hearing stories from the native peoples about 7 magnificent cities far to the north, cities whose very buildings were said to be constructed from solid gold. The Spanish colonists, desperate to believe a second treasure trove lay within their grasp, named this mythical place Cibola. The Viceroy of New Spain, Antonio de Mendoza, organized a grand expedition to claim this unbelievable prize. He placed a young, ambitious nobleman, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado, in command. In the year 1540, Coronado set forth with a massive force of over 1,300 Spanish soldiers, hundreds of indigenous allies, and a vast herd of livestock. They marched north, fueled by the dream of streets paved with gold. Their guide was a Franciscan friar who relied on second-hand reports and Esteban's fateful stories. Imagine the sight of this armored column, a river of steel and hope moving through the arid deserts of the American Southwest. After months of grueling travel, they finally reached their destination, the Zuni pueblo of Huaca. But there was no gold. Instead of a gleaming metropolis, Coronado and his men found a multi-story village built from sun-dried adobe, which shimmered in the desert sun but was utterly devoid of precious metal. The disappointed and furious conquistadors attacked the pueblo, seizing its food supplies but finding no treasure. Coronado's expedition did not end there. For 2 more years, his captains fanned out across the region, chasing other rumors of golden cities. It was during this desperate search that a small party, led by Garcia Lopez de Cardenas, became the first Europeans to lay eyes on the Grand Canyon. They stood at its immense rim, staring into a chasm so vast it defied comprehension. Other scouts ventured east, emerging onto the endless sea of grass that was the Great Plains, a landscape teeming with massive herds of buffalo. The quest for the 7 cities of Cibola was a catastrophic failure in its stated goal. It found no gold and bankrupted its backers, yet its true, unintended legacy was one of discovery. It opened up the American Southwest to European eyes, mapping unknown rivers, encountering diverse cultures, and revealing 2 of the continent's greatest natural wonders. The legend itself was almost certainly a grand misunderstanding, a Spanish fantasy projected onto the real and impressive ruins of the ancestral Puebloan people, sometimes called the Anasazi. These ancient communities, with their complex multi-room dwellings carved into canyon walls, were evidence of a sophisticated and prosperous society. Their tales of distant, wealthy towns passed through multiple languages and filtered through desperate hope, were transformed into the myth of the 7 golden cities. The dream of Cibola evaporated into the desert air, leaving behind not treasure, but a new, if painful, understanding of a continent's true nature. The shimmering mirage of Cibola faded into desert dust, a testament to how hope can reshape an entire landscape. Yet another legend, just as magnificent, presents us with the opposite problem. We know exactly where it was supposed to be, but the earth itself refuses to yield its secret. This is the enigma of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a wonder so beautiful it defied the very dryness of its environment. Classical writers like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus painted a picture of a botanical miracle. They described a towering ziggurat of terraces, each one a floating island of lush vegetation, rising high above the flat Mesopotamian plains. These were not simply gardens, they were a monumental act of love. The story goes that King Nebuchadnezzar II built them for his wife, Ametes, who missed the green, mountainous landscape of her homeland. To cure her longing, he constructed a man-made mountain of trees, fragrant flowers, and cascading vines, all sustained by a complex irrigation system of screws and pumps drawing water from the Euphrates River. Imagine the sound of water trickling down through those stone terraces, a constant, soothing murmur in the heart of a sun-baked empire. The visual would have been staggering, a vibrant, living pyramid of green against a pale blue sky, a sight to convince anyone they were in a divine realm. This is the legend that has captivated the world for 2,000 years, but here is the great historical mystery. Archaeologists have excavated the city of Babylon extensively. They have found the foundations of Nebuchadnezzar's vast palace and the remains of the Great Walls. Yet, not a single piece of definitive evidence for these legendary gardens has been found. No unusual water channels, no special foundations designed to support immense weight and moisture, no depictions in Babylonian art. The silence from the ground is deafening. This complete lack of physical proof has led some scholars to a radical theory. Perhaps the Hanging Gardens were not in Babylon at all. They point to ancient cuneiform texts from the earlier Assyrian Empire, which describe the ambitious engineering projects of King Sennacherib in his capital, Nineveh. His inscriptions boast of a vast system of canals, dams, and aqueducts, and of a magnificent palace surrounded by a garden, a microcosm of the world, watered by bronze screws and raised high on stone arches. Could it be that over centuries, the memory of Sennacherib's incredible gardens in Nineveh was transferred through story and conquest to the more famous city of Babylon and its great king? Was this wonder of the world a poetic invention, a beautiful story that grew in the telling, or was it a real place, just not where we have been looking for so long? Visualize the contrast between the romantic reconstructions of these soaring green terraces and the stark, sun-baked ruins of Babylon today, where the only thing hanging in the air is the unanswered question of what truly grew there. The silence of Babylon's ruins is a powerful reminder of how a single story can eclipse history. But what happens when a legend is born not from poetry, but from science itself? In the middle of the 19th century, a genuine scientific puzzle gave rise to one of the most enduring myths of a lost world. Zoologists were baffled by the curious distribution of lemurs, those wide-eyed primates found on the island of Madagascar and in parts of India and Africa, but nowhere in between. To explain this, the British zoologist Philip Sclater proposed a radical idea in the year 1864. He suggested that a massive land bridge, a sunken continent he named Lemuria, must have once stretched across the Indian Ocean, connecting these now separated lands and allowing the early ancestors of lemurs to migrate. This was not a fanciful tale. For its time, it was a serious, if speculative, geological hypothesis. Visualize the maps from that era, depicting this vast, phantom continent as a sprawling landmass between southern India and Madagascar, a rational solution to a perplexing biological mystery. But the story of Lemuria was about to take a strange and unexpected turn. The scientific theory was soon adopted and utterly transformed by the emerging spiritualist and occult movements of the late 19th century. The most influential figure in this transformation was the charismatic and controversial Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy. In her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, she seized upon Sclater's sunken continent and reimagined it entirely. For Blavatsky, Lemuria was no mere land bridge for animals. It became the spiritual homeland of the third root race of humanity, a race of gigantic, egg-laying hermaphrodites with a third eye and psychic powers. She described a vast, primordial civilization that had reached great mystical heights before succumbing to corruption and sinking beneath the waves, a clear echo of the Atlantis story, but with a far more esoteric flavor. This mystical Lemuria was populated by fantastical creatures and served as a key chapter in her complex cosmology of human spiritual evolution. The scientific hypothesis and the occult legend then existed in parallel, two completely different visions of the same lost land. One was a proposal to explain animal migration, the other a grand narrative of humanity's cosmic past. The scientific version of Lemuria, however, could not survive the advancement of knowledge. In the 20th century, the theory of plate tectonics provided the true explanation for the lemur's distribution. Madagascar and India were indeed once connected, but as part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. They slowly drifted apart over millions of years, carried by the movement of the Earth's plates, with no need for a sinking continent to explain the journey. Lemuria, as a scientific concept, was rendered completely obsolete. Yet the legend did not die. It found fertile new ground. In Tamil nationalist traditions in southern India, stories emerged of a lost Tamil civilization called Kumari Kandam, often identified with Lemuria, which was said to have connected India to a larger continent before it was lost to the sea. This narrative gave a profound historical depth and a sense of glorious, sunken origins to Tamil culture. Meanwhile, in New Age spiritual circles, Blavatsky's version flourished, with Lemuria becoming a kind of Pacific Age Atlantis, a utopian society of advanced spiritual beings whose wisdom is waiting to be rediscovered by enlightened seekers. The journey of Lemuria is a fascinating case study in the life of a legend. It began as a rational answer to a scientific question, was reborn as a mystical cornerstone of an occult belief system, was discarded by the very science that created it, and then persisted as a powerful cultural and spiritual symbol. It shows us that a story, once set loose into the world, can take on a life of its own, completely untethered from its original factual anchor. High in the thin, biting air of the Himalayas, a different kind of mystery walks the frozen slopes, one woven from the very fabric of the mountains. This is the legend of the Yeti, the abominable snowman. Long before Western explorers ever set foot in the region, the Sherpa and Tibetan peoples spoke of a large, hairy, ape-like being they called the Yeti. In their pre-Buddhist folklore, this creature was not merely an animal. It was a powerful, spiritual figure, a guardian of the wilderness that demanded respect and caution. The Yeti existed in a space between the physical and the supernatural, a symbol of the immense, untamable power of the high peaks. The first wave of Western fascination crested in the early 20th century as mountaineering expeditions pushed toward the summit of Everest. These climbers returned with astonishing tales, but not just of the climb itself. They brought back photographs of enormous, mysterious footprints pressed into the high-altitude snow, tracks that defied easy explanation. They told stories of hearing unearthly, echoing cries in the night. The legend solidified with the display of physical artifacts, most famously the so-called Yeti scalps, kept as sacred objects in remote monasteries like Kamjung in Nepal. These strange, conical relics, when shown to the world, seemed to offer tangible proof that something unknown was living in the roof of the world. The hunt was on. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the quest for the Yeti became a global obsession. Even the most celebrated mountaineers were drawn into the search. Sir Edmund Hillary, the first man to stand atop Everest along with his Sherpa partner Tenzing Norgay, led a high-profile expedition specifically to gather evidence. They examined the famous scalps, which upon closer scientific analysis were revealed to be fashioned from the skin of the sero, a local goat antelope. This pattern of debunking became common. The large, haunting footprints, which often appeared in a single file line, were frequently explained as the tracks of known animals. A bear walking through melting snow can leave a blurred, elongated print that looks unnervingly humanoid. The intense cold, low oxygen, and sheer isolation of the high Himalayas can also play tricks on the mind, leading to vivid hallucinations and misperceptions that transform a distant bear or a blowing patch of snow into a mythical beast. Science has offered a cascade of rational explanations, from misidentified wildlife to the psychological effects of extreme environments. Yet, despite all this, the legend refuses to die. Why does the idea of the Yeti hold such a powerful grip on us? Perhaps it represents the last great terrestrial mystery, a final blank spot on the map of our understanding. In a world that often feels fully charted and explained, the Yeti is a comforting reminder that wild, unknown places still exist, and that they might still hold secrets we have yet to uncover. The high Himalayas hold their secrets close, but a different kind of mystery stirs in the deep, dark waters of a Scottish lake. In the spring of 1933, a local couple driving along the newly constructed road on the shores of Loch Ness reported seeing an enormous creature, far larger than any seal, rolling and plunging in the water. This single account, published in the Inverness Courier, ignited a firestorm. The newspaper's editor, tantalized by the story, coined the name that would echo around the world, the Loch Ness Monster. The modern legend of Nessie was born, and the quiet loch was suddenly thrust into an unrelenting global spotlight. A year later, the most iconic piece of evidence emerged, a photograph that would define the search for decades. It was taken by a London gynecologist, Robert Kenneth Wilson, and showed a long neck and small head rising from the lake's surface. This image, known forever as the surgeon's photograph, was presented as credible proof from a man of science and standing. For generations, this grainy black and white image was the cornerstone of the Nessie belief system. It was not until the 1990s that the truth was finally confessed. The photograph was an elaborate hoax, a toy submarine fitted with a sculpted head. The monster that captivated millions was, in this instance, a complete fabrication. Yet the idea of something in the loch predates the 20th century by centuries. Scottish folklore is rich with tales of water kelpies, shape-shifting spirits that haunt the rivers and lochs, often appearing as horses to lure the unwary to a watery doom. These ancient stories of dangerous, mysterious water creatures created a fertile ground for the modern myth to take root. When the 1933 sighting occurred, it did not introduce a new idea. It simply clothed an old folkloric fear in a new, seemingly scientific guise. The search for proof, however, did not end with the exposed hoax. Loch Ness became a testing ground for modern technology. Sonar expeditions have repeatedly swept the vast, deep trench, sometimes revealing unexplained, large moving objects deep beneath the surface. Underwater photographs have captured ambiguous shapes, like the flipper-like object nicknamed the gargoyle head. Most recently, a major environmental DNA study sampled the loch's water for genetic traces of every living thing within it. The results found no evidence of a prehistoric reptile, but they did find an abundance of eel DNA, leading to the compelling theory that Nessie could be a massive, overgrown version of this common creature. Other explanations are more mundane: floating logs from the surrounding forests, unusual wave patterns caused by the loch's unique geography, or simple misidentifications of seals or birds. The enduring power of the Loch Ness Monster lies not in any single piece of evidence, but in the profound mystery of the location itself. Loch Ness is immense, deeper than the North Sea, and filled with cold, peat-stained water that reduces visibility to almost nothing. It is a place that feels ancient and secretive, a perfect canvas for our deepest anxieties and our wildest hopes. We want to believe that in a world so thoroughly explored, there remains a hidden corner where a giant from another age still swims in the shadows. While the mists of Loch Ness hide one kind of aquatic mystery, the open ocean holds a far more ancient and terrifying fear. From the icy fjords of Scandinavia came tales of a beast so colossal it could pull a Viking longship into the abyss with its writhing arms. This was the kraken, the ultimate nightmare of every sailor who dared to venture beyond the sight of land. The legend first surfaces in writing within the 13th century Icelandic saga of Örvar Odder. Here, it describes two massive sea monsters, the Hafgufa and the Lyngbakka, creatures so enormous they were often mistaken for islands. Sailors would speak in hushed tones of landing on a seemingly solid shore, only to feel the ground tremble and sink beneath them as the living island dove into the deep, dragging their ship and crew down into a whirlpool of its own making. The legend grew richer and more detailed over the centuries. In the 1700s, the Norwegian bishop and naturalist Erik Pontoppidan compiled a history of his country's natural world, and in it he gave the kraken its most vivid description. He wrote of a creature the size of a floating island whose body, when it rose to the surface, could be mistaken for a cluster of small skerries. He described its terrible arms, long enough to encircle the largest warship, and claimed that the whirlpool created when it submerged was more dangerous than the beast itself, capable of sucking an entire fleet down to a watery grave. For generations, this was the monster that haunted the edges of known maps, depicted by terrified cartographers as a tangle of tentacles wrapping around helpless vessels. The true identity of the Kraken, however, is now widely accepted by science. This legendary ship destroyer is almost certainly based on encounters with the giant squid, Archaeoteuthis dux. For centuries, this creature was as mythical as the Kraken itself, known only from mangled pieces found in sperm whale stomachs or washed up on remote beaches. It is a real denizen of the deep ocean twilight zone, a creature of profound darkness that can grow to lengths exceeding 40 feet, with eyes the size of dinner plates to gather what little light exists in its realm. Imagine the terror of a whaler in a small wooden boat, seeing one of these pale, ghostly giants breach the surface, its long, whip-like tentacles and powerful arms creating a scene of otherworldly horror. A creature of that scale, confused and thrashing at the surface, could easily be perceived as an intentional, monstrous attack. The Kraken's transition from sailor's terror to pop culture icon is a testament to its raw power. It has anchored epic poems, from Alfred Lord Tennyson's sonnet describing its ancient, dreamless, uninvaded sleep, to its central role in modern blockbusters like Pirates of the Caribbean, where it is unleashed as a force of pure, unstoppable destruction. The legend persists because it embodies our primal fear of the deep, a vast and alien world where light fails and monsters, both real and imagined, are still waiting in the dark. Deep in the humid night of rural Puerto Rico, a new kind of monster was born. The year was 1995, and a wave of panic swept across the island as farmers awoke to a grisly scene. Their livestock, mostly goats and chickens, lay dead under the Caribbean sky, their bodies completely drained of blood through a series of small, precise puncture wounds. Nothing was eaten, only the blood was taken. The terror needed a name, and the people gave it one: El Chupacabra, the goat sucker. The original descriptions from eyewitnesses were chillingly specific. They spoke of a creature that stood on two legs about the height of a small child, with leathery gray-green skin, sharp claws, and a row of sharp spines running down its back. Its eyes were said to be large, black, and oval, and it emitted a foul, sulfuric stench. This was not a creature from ancient myth. It felt like something from a science fiction film, an alien predator that had arrived to hunt in the modern world. The legend spread like wildfire, first throughout Latin America and then into the southern United States, carried by sensational news reports and fueled by a deep, primal fear. As the story traveled, the monster itself began to change. The bipedal, reptilian fiend slowly transformed in the public imagination into a different kind of beast entirely. A hairless, four-legged creature that looked more like a strange, wild dog or a coyote. This new version had pronounced back legs, large fangs, and the same haunting, spine-covered back. So how did one monster become two? The answer lies at the intersection of mass hysteria, media, and a more mundane biological explanation. The original, alien-like description is a classic example of a cultural phantom, a monster shaped by our collective anxieties. The 90s were a decade filled with stories of UFOs and alien visitors, and the Chupacabra's initial form reflects that fear of the unknown from beyond our world. The later, more canine version, however, has a much more concrete origin. Wildlife experts and biologists began to notice that the photographs and carcasses presented as chupacabras almost always shared a common trait. These animals were suffering from an extreme case of sarcoptic mange, a severe skin disease caused by mites. This condition causes an animal, most often a coyote, fox, or dog, to lose all of its hair. Its skin becomes thickened, gray, and leathery. The creature is weakened, forced to hunt easier prey like livestock, and its gaunt, sickly appearance is so unlike a healthy animal that it becomes unrecognizable, a true monster from a disease. Visualize a side-by-side comparison, a blurry photograph of a supposed chupacabra next to a confirmed coyote with a severe mange infection. The resemblance is uncanny. The legend persists because it taps into a timeless fear, the threat of a mysterious predator lurking just beyond the porch light, a modern name for the age-old dread of what goes bump in the night. Across the vast skies of North America, a different kind of power was said to ride the storm clouds. For the indigenous peoples of the plains and the Pacific Northwest, the thunderbird was not a monster to be feared, but a sacred spirit of immense power. This was no ordinary creature. It was a colossal being, so large that the flapping of its wings was said to create the rumble of thunder, and the flash of its eyes brought lightning splitting the sky. In many traditions, the thunderbird was a divine force of creation and a protector of humanity, often depicted in a perpetual struggle with the great water serpents or horned snakes of the underworld, its victories ensuring the balance of the world and the coming of life-giving rain. You can see its majestic form carved into the towering totem poles of the Pacific Northwest, its wings outstretched and its features bold and commanding, a constant reminder of the spiritual forces that govern the natural world. This deep cultural significance makes the modern claims of its physical existence all the more compelling and complex. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, reports began to surface from settlers and explorers that echoed these ancient stories. They told of encountering birds of unimaginable size. The most famous of these accounts comes from 1890, when two Arizona ranchers claimed to have shot and killed a gigantic bird with smooth, featherless skin like a bat and a face reminiscent of an alligator, a description that sounds less like a traditional thunderbird and more like a surviving pterosaur from the age of dinosaurs. They supposedly photographed their trophy, but the image, like so many others, has been lost to time, existing only as a controversial legend in old newspapers. Other stories persist of enormous raptors with wingspans rivaling a small airplane seen gliding over remote valleys in Alaska and Pennsylvania. Could these sightings be a case of mistaken identity, where a large but known bird like a condor or eagle was misjudged in the heat of the moment? Or do they point to something else, a lingering folk memory of a time when truly massive birds like the teratorn, a prehistoric vulture with a wingspan of 20 feet or more, once shared the continent with early humans? The true power of the thunderbird legend, however, lies not in proving its physical reality, but in understanding its profound cultural role. It embodies the raw, untamed force of nature itself, a reminder that the sky above us is a realm of both life-giving rain and terrifying power, watched over by a spirit as vast as the horizon. From the vast skies of North America, we journey to the sun-scorched heart of Australia, where a different kind of mystery waits in the still, dark waters. The bunyip is a creature of profound importance in Australian Aboriginal mythology, a being whose very name often translates to devil or spirit. Unlike a single, uniformly described monster, the bunyip is a shapeshifter of legend, its form changing depending on the specific language group and region telling the story. In some traditions, it appears as a massive, hulking beast with a dog-like face, shaggy dark fur, and powerful tusks. In others, it is a more serpentine horror, with a long, swan-like neck, a horse's tail, and flippers rising from the water with a ghostly silence. This incredible diversity in its appearance is a testament to the rich and varied oral traditions of the First Nations peoples, each community weaving the creature from the fabric of their local landscape and cultural fears. The bunyip was far more than a simple monster story. It served a vital, practical role as a guardian of dangerous places. Its haunting cries, said to echo across the billabongs at night, were a powerful warning to children to stay away from the water's edge, where drowning was a real and constant threat. It was the spiritual embodiment of the peril that lurked in the deceptively calm surface of a waterhole, a lesson in respect for the land and its hidden dangers. When European settlers arrived in the 19th century, they were captivated and terrified by these stories. They recorded first-hand accounts from colonists who claimed to have seen something monstrous and unidentifiable. Some reports described a creature bellowing like a bull from the reeds, while others told of finding large, unidentifiable bones along riverbanks which they immediately attributed to the bunyip. In their attempts to rationalize the unknown, these settlers often reached for familiar, if unlikely, explanations. A seal that had traveled far upriver or a dugong glimpsed in murky water could easily be transformed by fear and imagination into the legendary beast. 19th century Australian newspapers frequently featured sensationalized stories and crude woodcut illustrations of the bunyip, trying to pin down a phantom that refused to be categorized. Visualize the stark contrast between ancient Aboriginal rock art, depicting the spirit in its many sacred forms, and those frantic colonial newspaper sketches, each trying to capture a terror they could not understand. The bunyip's enduring power lies in this very ambiguity. It is not a creature that has been chased with sonar or DNA sampling. It exists in the space between land and water, between animal and spirit, and between the ancient wisdom of the world's oldest living culture and the bewildered fear of the new arrivals. It reminds us that some legends are not meant to be solved, but to be listened to, for they hold the deep, resonant voice of the land itself. The dense, dripping jungles of the Congo Basin hold a secret that seems to have stepped directly out of prehistory. Here, deep in the remote swamps where the canopy blocks out the sun, local legends speak of the Mythical Unknown, a creature of immense size and ancient appearance. Descriptions from generations of folklore are remarkably consistent. It is said to be an animal as large as an elephant, with a long, flexible neck, a small head, and a powerful, muscular tail. Unlike the predators of myth, the Mythical Unknown is a herbivore, feeding on the lush riverbank vegetation, particularly the malombo plant, but it is fiercely, violently territorial. Stories tell of it attacking hippos and elephants that venture too close to its domain, using its sheer bulk and tail to smash their boats or drive them from the water. This is not a ghost or a spirit, but a very physical, living beast that, according to the tales, has always been here. The allure of this description is irresistible. It paints the picture of a surviving sauropod dinosaur, a relic from a bygone era somehow persisting in one of the last unexplored places on Earth. This possibility has drawn Western explorers and cryptozoologists into the heart of the Congo for over a century. The first major expeditions began in the early 1900s, funded by museums and driven by a thrilling mix of science and adventure. These early adventurers would show locals illustrations of dinosaurs from books, and witnesses would consistently point to the sauropods, confirming that the creature they knew matched the images. Throughout the 20th century and into the present day, dozens more teams have followed, armed with increasingly sophisticated technology. They have collected countless anecdotal accounts from villagers, stories passed down through families of encounters with the beast. They have documented strange, large footprints in the mud and listened for its purported deep, rumbling cry echoing through the foggy swamps. Visualize these quests, the dugout canoes gliding through waterways choked with vegetation, the humid air thick with insects, and the explorers scanning every ripple in the water, hoping for a glimpse of a long neck breaking the surface. Yet, despite this long and determined search, no definitive proof has ever been found. No bones, no clear photographs, no biological samples. The scientific community remains deeply skeptical, and for compelling reasons. The idea of a population of large dinosaurs surviving undetected for 65 million years is considered virtually impossible. Such a creature would require a substantial breeding population to avoid extinction, and a group of elephant-sized animals would leave behind a fossil record, carcasses, and other clear signs of their existence that have simply never been discovered. So what are people actually seeing? The most likely explanations point to known animals being misidentified in the challenging environment of the swamp. A submerged forest elephant with its trunk raised above the water as it swims can create a startlingly accurate silhouette of a long-necked creature. A rhinoceros, rarely seen in the region but not entirely absent, moving through the dense undergrowth could account for the stories of a large, thick-bodied herbivore. The human mind, especially when conditioned by expectation and local legend, is adept at shaping ambiguous shapes into the monster it hopes or fears to see. The enduring quest for the Mokele Mbembe is about more than just finding a dinosaur. It is a testament to the power of the unknown that still lingers in our world's final frontiers, and a reflection of our own longing for a planet that is still wild enough to hide such magnificent secrets. Deep in the eucalyptus-scented silence of the Australian bush, a different kind of presence is said to watch from the shadows. This is the yowie, a hulking, hairy hominid that stands as the continent's answer to Bigfoot. While the bunyip is a creature of the waterways, a shape-shifting spirit of the deep, the yowie is a being of the land, a terrestrial giant that walks upright through the remote forests and rugged mountain ranges of the outback. Its roots run deep into the tapestry of Aboriginal oral history, where it was known by many names across different language groups, such as the Doolagal or the Djerrawurra. In these ancient traditions, the yowie was often more than a mere monster. It could be a spiritual ancestor, a formidable teacher, or a cautionary figure that enforced tribal law, a powerful presence woven into the very identity of the land and its first peoples. When European colonists arrived, they brought with them their own folklore of wild men and hairy giants, and they soon began to hear stories and report their own unsettling encounters. The modern legend of the yowie was born from this cultural fusion. The 19th century saw a surge in accounts from settlers, gold prospectors, and timber workers who described startling run-ins with a massive, foul-smelling, ape-like creature that would vanish as quickly as it appeared. Today, the search continues through the lens of cryptozoology. Enthusiasts point to a compelling, if ambiguous, collection of evidence. There are hundreds of sworn testimonies from credible witnesses, from farmers to police officers. Blurry photographs and grainy videos capture large, dark shapes moving through the dense undergrowth. Perhaps most intriguing are the plaster casts made of enormous, human-like footprints found in muddy creek beds, impressions that show a foot far larger and broader than any known humans. The debate between believers and skeptics is as harsh and unforgiving as the Australian sun. Those who are convinced of the yowie's existence argue that the continent's vast, uninhabited interior provides more than enough space for a reclusive primate to remain hidden. They suggest it could be a relic population of Homo erectus or another ancient hominid that somehow crossed the land bridges of the distant past. Skeptics, however, offer a range of rational explanations. Many sightings, they argue, are likely cases of mistaken identity. A large kangaroo standing on its tail to survey its surroundings can, in a moment of panic or poor light, be mistaken for a towering bipedal creature. Others point to the possibility of feral humans, individuals living outside of society whose ragged appearance and solitary movements could spark fantastic stories. And as with any such legend, the shadow of deliberate hoaxes is always present, with people creating fake footprints or wearing costumes to perpetuate the mystery. Visualize the stark contrast between the sun-drenched, rust-colored soil of the outback and the deep, dark green of the bush where the yowie is said to dwell. Picture the plaster casts of those enigmatic footprints, their 5 toes clearly defined, lying next to a ruler for scale. Imagine the murky, green-hued footage from trail cameras set up in known hotspots where every shifting shadow seems to hold a promise. The yowie endures not because of any single piece of proof, but because it represents the wild, untamed heart of Australia itself, a reminder that even in the modern age, the ancient land might still be keeping its oldest residents a secret. While Australia's Yowie haunts the sun-baked bush, a far more sinister presence is said to stalk the deep, dark woods of the American East. The legend of the Jersey Devil is a uniquely American horror born in the sprawling, mist-shrouded pine barrens of New Jersey. This is no simple monster, but a true chimera of nightmares, described as a creature with the head of a horse, the wings of a bat, the cloven hooves of a goat, and a piercing, blood-curdling scream that echoes through the pines. Its most famous origin story takes us back to the year 1735, to a woman known as Mother Leeds. Local folklore claims that upon discovering she was pregnant with her 13th child, she threw her hands to the sky in despair and cried out, "Let this one be a devil." When the baby was born, it appeared normal at first, but then it transformed before the horrified eyes of the midwives. It grew leathery wings, sprouted horns, and killed its own mother before flying up the chimney and escaping into the night, forever cursing the region. This dramatic birth tale, while powerful, is almost certainly a later invention, a piece of folklore crafted to give a terrifying face to the dangers of the wilderness. For generations, the story was a local campfire tale, but it exploded into a statewide phenomenon in January of 1909. For one incredible week, the entire state of New Jersey was gripped by a mass panic. Hundreds of ordinary citizens from all walks of life reported seeing the creature. Police chiefs, politicians, and postmen gave sworn statements. People described it flying over rooftops, leaving strange, cloven hoofprints in the snow, and attacking a trolley car in the city of Camden. The fear became so pervasive that schools were closed and factories shut down as workers refused to travel in the dark. Newspapers fueled the hysteria with sensational headlines and published maps charting the bizarre flight path of the creature, as it was reportedly seen from one end of the state to the other in a matter of days. This week-long panic remains one of the most documented cases of mass hysteria in American history. So what was truly behind the sightings? Skeptics point to a far more plausible culprit, the sandhill crane. This is a large, prehistoric-looking bird with a wingspan of over 6 feet, a red patch on its head that could be mistaken for a horse-like face, and a loud, unnerving call. It is not native to New Jersey in the winter, so an out-of-place flock seen in the strange, half-light of a January dusk could easily have been misinterpreted by a public already primed by the local legend. Other theories suggest the story served a practical purpose, a folk tale designed to keep travelers out of the treacherous, maze-like pine barrens where quicksand, dangerous wildlife, and outlaw pinies posed a very real threat. Visualize the stark, misty beauty of the pine forests at dusk, the twisted branches creating a natural cathedral of shadows. Picture the bold, black headlines from 1909 newspapers screaming about the devil's latest appearance. The Jersey Devil endures because it is more than a monster. It is a perfect storm of folklore, mass psychology, and the primal fear of what might be waiting in the oldest, darkest woods just beyond our comfortable town. The dark woods of New Jersey hold no monopoly on terror born from the wilderness. In the isolated, mountainous region of Gévaudan in 18th century France, fear became a tangible, blood-soaked reality. Between the years 1764 and 1767, a reign of terror unfolded that would grip the entire nation. A creature, or perhaps several, began a systematic slaughter, targeting not livestock but people, with a horrifying preference for women and children tending flocks in the remote pastures. The death toll climbed into the dozens, with many more maimed and injured, creating a panic that reached all the way to the court of King Louis XV in Versailles. Contemporary accounts describe the beast of Gévaudan in chilling detail. Survivors spoke of an animal far larger than any normal wolf, with a massive, powerful chest and a long, flexible tail that ended in a tuft. Its coat was said to be a distinctive reddish fawn color, marked by a dark stripe running the length of its back. Its head was enormous, with a wide muzzle, formidable teeth, and ears that stood erect. Most terrifying of all were the stories of its seeming invincibility. Witnesses claimed it was immune to bullets, that lead shot would simply bounce off its hide, a belief that fed the growing superstition that this was no ordinary animal, but a demon sent by the devil himself. The response was monumental. The king himself took a personal interest, dispatching his own professional huntsmen and dragoons to the province. He offered a fortune in rewards, a sum that would be the equivalent of millions of dollars today, igniting a massive, years-long manhunt. The entire region became a stage for a desperate drama, with local farmers and royal soldiers alike scouring the forests and valleys. Several times they believed they had succeeded. A particularly large wolf, known as the Wolf of Chases, was killed and its body paraded before the court, but the attacks continued. The beast, it seemed, was still out there. Eventually, a local hunter named Jean Chastel is credited with firing the fatal shot in June of 1767. According to legend, he used a silver bullet, a detail that would later cement the creature's supernatural reputation. With that kill, the attacks finally ceased. So what was this monster that required the might of the French monarchy to defeat? The most straightforward theory points to an unusually large and aggressive specimen of the Eurasian wolf, perhaps one leading a pack that had developed a taste for human flesh. Others suggest a wolf-dog hybrid, a creature with the size of a wolf but without the natural fear of humans, making it a bolder, more dangerous predator. More exotic possibilities include an escaped hyena or even a surviving prehistoric predator like the mesonychid, though these are far less likely. The true identity of the beast of Gévaudan remains one of history's most compelling unsolved mysteries, a stark reminder of a time when the wilderness could still produce a nightmare that challenged an entire kingdom. A different kind of omen appeared not in ancient woods, but over a small American town in the 1960s. The quiet community of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, became the epicenter of a modern legend when, in November 1966, two young couples driving near a former World War II munitions plant called the TNT area reported a terrifying encounter. They described a man-sized figure with vast wings folded against its back and piercing, glowing red eyes that seemed to stare right into their souls. This was the first official sighting of the creature that would soon be known as the Mothman. The story spread like wildfire, and for 13 months the town was gripped by a wave of fear and fascination. Dozens more people came forward with their own accounts. They spoke of a silent, shadowy form that could keep pace with a speeding car, a being that would rise from the ground with an unnerving grace and vanish into the night sky. What made these reports so chilling was a recurring theme. The creature was often seen just before something terrible happened. It seemed to be a harbinger, a living warning of impending disaster. That premonition reached its devastating climax on December 15, 1967. During the evening rush hour, the Silver Bridge, a vital connection over the Ohio River, collapsed without warning. Dozens of cars plunged into the icy water, and 46 people lost their lives in the tragedy. In the stunned aftermath, the collective memory of the town immediately linked the catastrophe to the strange winged visitor. The Mothman had not been seen in the weeks leading up to the collapse, and many believed its disappearance meant its grim prophecy had been fulfilled. The creature's legacy was forever sealed as a prophet of doom. So what was truly haunting the skies over Point Pleasant? Skeptics point to a large, known bird native to the area, the sandhill crane. This tall bird has a distinctive red patch of skin on its head, which in the dim light of a car's headlights could be misconstrued as glowing red eyes. Its considerable wingspan and slow, powerful flight could also account for the descriptions of a large, soaring figure. Others suggest a phenomenon known as mass psychogenesis, where collective anxiety and fear, perhaps fueled by Cold War tensions and the eerie, abandoned bunkers of the TNT area, manifested in a shared hallucination of a monster. Of course, paranormal theories abound, proposing the Mothman was everything from an extraterrestrial to an interdimensional being. Today, the legend is kept alive by the town itself, which has embraced its mysterious past. A sleek, metal statue of the winged creature now stands in the center of Point Pleasant, its red eyes gleaming, a permanent monument to a time when the line between fear and folklore blurred, and a community learned that sometimes the most frightening warnings come from the most unexpected messengers. A different kind of hunger stalks the frozen forests of North America, a spiritual corruption born from the deepest winter. For the Algonquian-speaking peoples, the Wendigo was never just a monster you could hunt and kill. It was a malevolent, supernatural force, a spirit of the icy wind and desperate starvation that could possess a human being. This transformation most often occurred when a person, driven to the brink by famine, broke the ultimate taboo and consumed human flesh. In that moment of survival at the cost of their own humanity, the Wendigo spirit would enter them, twisting their body and soul into its own horrific image. The resulting creature is a vision of pure, unnatural hunger. It is described as a gaunt, emaciated figure, towering and skeletal, with skin stretched tight like parchment over its bones, often said to be the color of ash or death. Its eyes glow with a feral, yellow light in the darkness of the pines, and its most terrifying feature is its mouth, sometimes depicted as lipless, forever frozen in a silent scream. The Wendigo is cursed with an insatiable appetite for human flesh, a hunger that can never be filled. With every person it consumes, the creature grows larger and stronger, yet its emaciation only deepens, a perpetual, living embodiment of its own endless craving. This legend served a profound cultural and psychological purpose. In the harsh realities of life in the northern wilderness, where winter could bring devastating famine, the story of the Wendigo was a powerful, chilling deterrent against cannibalism. It was a social safeguard, teaching that to give in to that ultimate act of desperation was to lose your soul forever, becoming the very thing you feared. On a deeper level, the Wendigo is a potent metaphor for greed and unchecked consumption. It represents the idea that the selfish, endless consumption of resources, be it food, land, or power, is a spiritual sickness that ultimately consumes the self, leaving only a hollow, ever-hungry shell. The legend has been powerfully adapted in modern horror, from Algernon Blackwood's classic short story to films like Antlers, but these depictions often focus on the physical horror of the creature. The original folklore is far more chilling in its psychological terror, the idea that the potential for this transformation lies within every human heart, waiting for the right conditions of desperation and moral collapse to take root. Visualize the stark, silent beauty of a snow-blanketed forest at night, the only sound the crunch of frost underfoot. A shadow moves between the trees, impossibly tall and thin, its glowing eyes fixed on you. This is the true horror of the Wendigo, a warning whispered on the cold wind about the monsters we can become when we let our hungers consume us. The Wendigo's chilling hunger speaks to a fear of what lies within us, but in the shadow-dappled depths of the Amazon, a different terror awaits, born from a time long before humanity. Brazilian folklore warns of the Mapinguari, a creature of pure primal dread. This is no spectral entity, but a physical monster described as a giant, shambling beast, taller than a man and blanketed in coarse red hair. It emits a stench so foul it can be smelled from miles away, and its deafening roar shatters the jungle's silence. But its most horrifying feature is the gaping, toothed mouth said to be set in the middle of its belly, a second set of jaws for tearing and devouring. For generations, the stories told by indigenous tribes and rubber tappers have been remarkably consistent. They speak of encountering this solitary horror deep in the untouched wilderness, a creature that is not merely aggressive but seemingly invincible. Bullets, they claim, simply bounce off its tough hide, making the Mapinguari an unstoppable force of nature. The sheer specificity of these accounts has led some cryptozoologists to a breathtaking theory. Could this legendary monster be a living relic, a surviving giant ground sloth from the Pleistocene epoch? We know that creatures like the Megatherium, a true behemoth the size of an elephant, once roamed South America. These massive herbivores, relatives of today's much smaller tree sloths, were built like tanks with huge claws and bony plates embedded in their skin for protection. The description of the Mapinguari's size, its shaggy fur, and its reported immunity to bullets align eerily well with what we know of these prehistoric giants. The idea of a second mouth could be a folkloric exaggeration of a specialized organ or a throat sac used for bellowing, distorted through generations of terrifying encounters. Imagine the sheer scale of the Amazon rainforest, a realm so vast and impenetrable that new species are discovered regularly and entire river systems remain uncharted. In such an immense, hidden world, is it truly impossible that a relict population of megafauna could have persisted, hidden from modern eyes? Picture a rubber tapper alone on a narrow trail, stumbling upon a shape that should not exist, a shaggy red giant rising from the ferns. Visualize the skeletons of the Megatherium in a museum, their colossal frames hinting at the living reality that may still walk the jungle. The legend of the Mapinguari forces us to confront the possibility that our planet's deepest wildernesses are not just hiding small creatures, but might still be home to the last echoes of a lost world. While the Mapinguari represents a primal fear of the jungle's depths, another serpentine being occupies a space of profound reverence and complexity. Across the vast spiritual landscape of India and Southeast Asia, the Naga is not a monster to be slain, but a divine race of serpent beings woven into the very fabric of Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain traditions. These are not mere snakes, they are powerful, intelligent entities, most often depicted with a majestic human upper torso and the powerful, coiled lower body of a serpent. They are frequently shown with multiple hooded heads, a symbol of their immense spiritual power and authority. Their nature is beautifully ambivalent, a duality that reflects the complex forces of the natural world they govern. On one hand, Nagas are revered as protectors. They are the guardians of the earth's most precious treasures, not just gold and jewels, but the sacred spiritual texts and the life-giving waters of springs, rivers, and rainfall. They are the benevolent rulers of the underworld, a realm of immense wealth and wisdom called Patala. Yet their power also carries a dangerous edge. When angered or disrespected, a Naga can bring drought, disease, or disaster, a reminder that the forces of nature are both creative and destructive. One of the most famous Nagas is Shesha, or Ananta, whose name means the Endless One. He is the eternal king of all Nagas, a being of such immense size that he is depicted as floating on the cosmic ocean, his countless hoods forming a protective canopy for the god Vishnu who rests upon his coils. In this role, Shesha represents the foundation of the universe itself, the stable ground upon which reality is built and sustained. This deep cultural significance flows far beyond India. In Thailand and Cambodia, the Naga is a central figure of national identity. You can see their elegant, multi-headed stone forms flanking the entrance bridges to temples like Angkor Wat, their bodies creating a symbolic passage from the earthly realm to the spiritual one. In traditional Thai dance, performers wear elaborate, glistening Naga headdresses, their movements mimicking the graceful, undulating motion of the serpent, bringing the myth to life in a spectacle of art and devotion. These are not relics of a forgotten past. They are living symbols reminding people of the sacred balance between humanity and the powerful, unseen forces of the natural world. From the primal hunger of the jungle, we find a gentler, yet profoundly heartbreaking mystery waiting in the cold, salt-sprayed air of the North Atlantic. The waves that crash against the rocky shores of Scotland, Ireland, and the Faroe Islands carry with them the mournful songs of the Selkies. These are not monsters, but magical beings, seals while in the water who possess the enchanting ability to shed their skin and walk on land as stunningly beautiful men and women. Their legends are woven from the mist and the sea foam, tales of a deep, inherent longing that speaks directly to the human soul. the most common and poignant story follows a tragic pattern. A fisherman walking along a deserted beach happens upon a group of selkies dancing in the moonlight, their silvery sealskins lying discarded on the sand. Overcome by the beauty of one, he snatches her skin and hides it. Without her pelt, the selkie cannot return to the ocean. She is trapped, forced to become his wife and bear his children. She is often a good wife, a gentle mother, but a profound sadness never leaves her eyes. She spends her days staring out at the sea, her true home, with an inconsolable yearning. The story reaches its emotional climax years later, when one of her children accidentally discovers the hidden sealskin. The moment she touches it, the call of the ocean becomes irresistible. She slips back into the waves, returning to her seal form and her life in the sea, leaving her human family behind forever. This narrative is more than a simple fairy tale. It is a powerful symbol of loss and the clash between two incompatible worlds. It can be interpreted as a metaphor for the experience of immigrants, forced to adapt to a new culture while forever mourning the home they lost. It reflects on the nature of captivity itself and the deep-seated need for freedom that can never be truly extinguished. The legend also touches upon the complex dynamics of relationships built on possession rather than mutual love, where one partner's true nature is suppressed. While the female selkie's story is one of poignant captivity, the male selkies are figures of wild, untamable allure. They are said to be exceptionally handsome, emerging from the surf to seduce lonely women on the shore. These encounters were often blamed for unexpected pregnancies when husbands were away at sea. The male selkies also commanded the weather itself, their anger said to summon fierce storms that could keep fishermen's boats in harbor for days. Imagine the visual of this world, the dark, sleek heads of seals bobbing in the choppy gray water, their eyes holding a strange, knowing intelligence. Picture a lone woman on a windswept cliff, watching a handsome stranger emerge from the mist, or a fisherman's cottage where a wife silently gazes at the horizon, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Artistic depictions often show selkies half in and half out of the water, their human forms draped with the glistening, dark sealskin, forever caught between two states of being. Their story endures because it captures a universal feeling of homesickness for a place we cannot name, a reminder that some loves are as deep and as restless as the sea and as impossible to hold. From the ocean's mournful ballads of the selkies, we cross to the freshwater streams of Japan, where a creature of equal complexity but far more mischief awaits. The kappa is a being of stark contradictions, a water imp that could just as easily pull you under as help mend your broken bones. It appears as a child-sized humanoid with scaly, greenish skin, a turtle-like shell on its back, and webbed hands and feet perfect for its aquatic life. Its most peculiar feature is the saucer-like depression on the top of its head, which holds a small pool of water. This water is the very source of its strength and life force when it ventures onto dry land. Without it, the kappa becomes weak and immobile, a prisoner of the world it sought to explore. This small, liquid vulnerability is the key to understanding this entire legend. The kappa's nature is a perfect reflection of the rivers it inhabits, which can be sources of life giving irrigation and serene beauty, but can also swell into destructive, drowning torrents without warning. On its malevolent days, the kappa is a true terror of the waterways. It is said to lie in wait for unsuspecting swimmers, horses, and cattle, pulling them down into the depths to drown them. Its grisly goal was often the consumption of a specific organ, the liver, an act that connects it to ancient fears of water spirits claiming a physical toll from the living. Yet this same creature could be reasoned with, appeased, and even befriended. It was known to have a deep sense of honor and a peculiar obsession with politeness and formal challenges. If you encountered a kappa, the surest way to defeat it was to offer a deep, respectful bow. The creature's ingrained courtesy would compel it to return the gesture, spilling the precious water from the dish on its head. Once dehydrated, it would be left helpless, and you could force it to promise never to harm anyone again. This simple act of etiquette disarming a monster is a uniquely Japanese twist on folklore. But the relationship could go further. A pacified kappa could be a powerful ally. Folktales tell of villages that befriended these imps, and in return, the kappas taught them advanced skills in medicine, particularly bone setting, and shared invaluable knowledge about irrigation and farming, turning barren fields into fertile land. They were known to love cucumbers, so farmers would often write their family names on the vegetables and toss them into the river as an offering to ensure safe passage for their children. You can see the kappa's enduring presence in classic ukiyo-e woodblock prints, where they are depicted wrestling with humans or lurking at the water's edge. In modern times, they have been reinvented as cute, comical characters in anime and manga, a far cry from their sinister origins. To this day, you can find small, warning statues of kappas near ponds and rivers in rural Japan, a lasting testament to a legend that beautifully balances the benevolent and the monstrous, reminding everyone that even the most dangerous forces of nature can be negotiated with if you only know the rules. From the kappa's watery domain, we rise into the realm of fire and air, to a legend that conquers death itself. The phoenix stands as one of humanity's most universal symbols, a magnificent bird that embodies the eternal cycle of destruction and renewal. Its story appears in countless cultures, each with its own beautiful variation on the theme of resurrection. In ancient Egypt, the myth began with the Bennu, a heron-like bird associated with the sun god Ra and the annual flooding of the Nile. The Bennu was a symbol of creation and the dawn, a creature that renewed itself each morning. But the version that captured the Western imagination comes from the Greeks and Romans. They envisioned the phoenix as a stunning, eagle-like bird with feathers of brilliant crimson and gold, a being so rare that only one could exist at a time. This magnificent creature lived for 500 years or more, and when it felt its life nearing its end, it would gather aromatic branches like cinnamon and myrrh, building its own funeral pyre. Then, as the sun reached its zenith, the phoenix would strike the wood with its wings, igniting a blazing fire that consumed both the nest and the bird in a glorious, self-made inferno. Yet from those smoldering ashes, a new, young phoenix would emerge, reborn with all the wisdom of its predecessor, ready to begin the cycle anew. This powerful image of life springing from its own destruction resonated deeply with early Christians, who adopted the phoenix as a potent symbol for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In the catacombs of Rome and the pages of illuminated manuscripts, artists depicted the phoenix alongside crosses, its fiery death and rebirth serving as a clear metaphor for Christ's triumph over death and the promise of eternal life for the faithful. The legend did not fade with antiquity. It has soared through centuries of literature, from the epic poems of Ovid to the modern pages of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series, where Fawkes the Phoenix embodies loyalty and healing. The core concept of a deathless bird appears across the globe. In Persian mythology, the simurgh is a vast, wise bird that sees the world destroyed and reborn 3 times, accumulating infinite knowledge. In Chinese tradition, the Feng Huang is a majestic, composite creature representing the empress and the harmonious balance of yin and yang, often associated with prosperity and a new dynasty's rise. Hindu stories speak of the Garuda, a divine eagle-like being who is the king of birds and a sworn enemy of snakes. While Garuda is immortal, his role as a vehicle for the god Vishnu connects him to themes of divine intervention and cosmic cycles. The visual journey of the phoenix is as vibrant as its legend. Imagine the stark, elegant lines of an Egyptian hieroglyph showing the Bennu bird perched on a pyramidion. Picture the intricate, colorful illustrations in a medieval bestiary where the phoenix burns in a swirl of red and gold ink. Modern digital artists have brought the spectacle to life with breathtaking detail, showing the bird engulfed in a vortex of flame, its form dissolving into embers only for a new, fledgling form to rise, wings outstretched from the glowing cinders. Why does this myth endure across so many cultures and millennia? It speaks to our most profound hopes, the belief that endings are not permanent, that from the ashes of a forest fire springs new growth, and that after the long, cold night, the sun will always rise again. A creature of impossible grace once trotted through the pages of ancient texts long before it galloped into our fairy tales. Our modern image of the unicorn is a product of the European Middle Ages, but its story begins far earlier and in a much less familiar form. In the 5th century before the Common Era, the Greek historian and physician Ctesias wrote of a wild ass in India. He described it as a swift, powerful beast with a single horn projecting from the center of its forehead, a horn that was white at the base, black in the middle, and tipped with a vibrant crimson. This creature, which he called the Martichoras, was likely a garbled account of the Indian rhinoceros, filtered through the whispers of travelers and merchants along the Silk Road. The rhinoceros, with its single, formidable horn and tough, alien appearance, was a perfect candidate for such a fantastic transformation in the minds of people who had never seen one. Other classical writers like Pliny the Elder would later echo and embellish these descriptions, cementing the idea of a single-horned beast from the mysterious East in the Western imagination. This was not yet the pure, horse-like creature we know, but a strange and wondrous animal from the edges of the known world. It was during the medieval period that the unicorn underwent its most profound transformation. Shedding its ass-like or rhinoceros-like appearance, it became a symbol of breathtaking purity and divine power. It was reimagined as a sleek, white, horse-like or goat-like animal, elegant and fierce, with a long, spiraled horn of dazzling white. This horn, known as an alicorn, was believed to possess incredible magical properties. It could purify poisoned water, making a tainted spring safe to drink. Ground into a powder, it was said to cure epilepsy, neutralize poisons, and heal any manner of sickness. This belief made unicorn horn one of the most valuable and sought-after substances in the world, more precious than gold. The trade in these so-called horns was a roaring business for centuries, a trade built entirely upon a magnificent deception. The source was not a mythical beast, but the narwhal, a small Arctic whale whose long, spiraled tusk perfectly matched the description of the unicorn's horn. Merchants and apothecaries would sell these rare tusks for immense sums to kings and popes, who would have them fashioned into scepters or drinking cups to protect themselves from assassination by poison. The unicorn's symbolism was deeply woven into the fabric of medieval Christianity. It came to represent Christ himself, its single horn a symbol of the unity of God and the Son, and its fierce, untamable nature a reflection of divine power. The most enduring image from this time is the unicorn hunt. Elaborate tapestries, like the famous series The Hunt of the Unicorn, depict a narrative where the only way to capture the mighty creature is through the presence of a pure maiden. The unicorn, disarmed by her innocence, would lay its head in her lap, at which point the hunters could take it. This poignant scene was a clear allegory for the Incarnation, where Christ, represented by the unicorn, is drawn into the world through the purity of the Virgin Mary. These stunning tapestries, woven with rich threads of wool and silk, show the unicorn surrounded by a lush, symbolic garden, a creature of both the earthly and the divine. The legend of the unicorn is a fascinating journey of a single idea, morphing from a misunderstood rhinoceros in a Greek travelogue to a central symbol of medieval faith. Its reality so deeply desired that the world convinced itself that a whale's tooth was a piece of magic. A single, glaring eye stares out from the heart of Greek mythology, but this iconic monster hides a surprising duality. The Cyclopes were not a single kind of creature, but two distinct races born from the same cosmic chaos. First came the primordial Cyclopes, the sons of the sky and the earth. Their names were Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, which translate to thunder, lightning, and brightness. These were not brutish cave dwellers, but divine master smiths imprisoned by their father in the depths of the underworld. It was the king of the gods, Zeus, who freed them, and in gratitude they forged his most potent weapons. Within their volcanic forges, they created Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's earth-shaking trident, and Hades' helmet of darkness. Imagine the glow of a colossal workshop deep within a mountain, the three giant brothers hammering divine weapons that would shape the fate of the cosmos, their single eyes focused with intense creative power. This vision is a far cry from the more famous Cyclops we meet centuries later in Homer's epic poem, the Odyssey. Here, on a remote island, the hero Odysseus and his men take shelter in what they believe is an empty cave. They soon discover it is the home of Polyphemus, a giant who is the epitome of savage pastoral life. He is a shepherd, a being of raw, unchecked force with no regard for the gods or the laws of hospitality. When he returns, he seals the cave with a massive boulder and proceeds to devour Odysseus's men, smashing their heads against the ground. This is the Cyclops of nightmare, a creature of pure cannibalistic appetite. The clever Odysseus eventually blinds Polyphemus's single eye with a sharpened, heated stake, allowing his remaining crew to escape by clinging to the bellies of the giant sheep. Visualize the dramatic scenes painted on ancient Greek pottery, showing the hero and his men driving the stake into the monster's eye, a moment of terrifying vengeance. How did such a specific legend of a one-eyed giant come to be? A fascinating theory points not to fantasy, but to fossil evidence. In the early 20th century, paleontologist Othenio Abel proposed that ancient Greeks may have stumbled upon the skulls of prehistoric dwarf elephants. These creatures once lived on Mediterranean islands like Crete and Sicily. To an observer with no knowledge of paleontology, such a skull would look bizarre and monstrous. The large central nasal cavity for the trunk, set high on the skull, could easily be mistaken for a single, enormous eye socket. The smaller, actual eye sockets on the sides of the skull might have been overlooked. Picture a side-by-side comparison, the fossil of a dwarf elephant skull next to an artist's rendering of how a Greek might have interpreted those bones, fleshing them out into the face of a terrifying giant. This theory offers a compelling bridge between the world of myth and the real, physical remains that littered the ancient landscape, suggesting that the legend of the Cyclops was born from a genuine, if misunderstood, encounter with a lost world. Deep within the palace of Knossos, a different kind of monster was born not from wilderness, but from a royal transgression against the gods themselves. This is the legend of the Minotaur, a creature of profound terror and sorrow, a half-man, half-bull confined to a maze of stone. Its origin is a tale of divine punishment. King Minos of Crete, to secure his rule, prayed to the sea god Poseidon to send a magnificent bull from the waves as a sign of favor, promising to sacrifice it in return. When a stunning white bull emerged, Minos was so captivated by its beauty that he broke his vow, keeping it for himself and sacrificing an ordinary bull instead. In a terrible act of retribution, Poseidon caused Minos' wife, Queen Pasiphae, to fall into an unnatural and consuming passion for the very same bull. To satisfy this cursed desire, the master craftsman Daedalus constructed a hollow, lifelike wooden cow. Hidden within it, Pasiphae was able to mate with the bull, and from this union the Minotaur was born. A monster with the body of a man and the head of a bull, it was named Asterion, but its violent nature and unnatural appetite for human flesh earned it the title Minotaur, the Bull of Minos. The king, horrified and shamed, could not bring himself to kill the creature, yet he could not allow it to roam free. He commanded Daedalus to build an inescapable prison, a vast, bewildering maze known as the Labyrinth, and he sealed his monstrous stepson within its dark, winding corridors. The terror of the Minotaur became a tool of power. After defeating the city of Athens in war, King Minos imposed a gruesome tribute. Every 9 years, or in some versions every single year, 7 Athenian youths and 7 maidens were sent into the labyrinth as sacrificial offerings. left to wander the confusing passages until they were found and devoured by the ravenous beast. This cycle of horror continued until the arrival of the Athenian prince Theseus. Volunteering as one of the tributes, he sailed to Crete, determined to end the bloody practice. Upon his arrival, he caught the eye of King Minos' daughter, Ariadne. She fell deeply in love with him and, desperate to save him from certain death, sought the counsel of the labyrinth's own creator, Daedalus. He provided the simple, brilliant solution. Ariadne gave Theseus a ball of thread, instructing him to tie one end to the entrance of the maze and to unravel it as he ventured deeper. Theseus entered the terrifying darkness, the sounds of the monster echoing off the stone walls. He followed the thread into the heart of the labyrinth, where he confronted the Minotaur. In a fierce and brutal struggle, he slew the beast. Then, using the thread to guide him back, he retraced his steps, escaping the maze that had claimed so many lives and freeing Athens from its dreadful debt. Could such a story be rooted in a real place? The sprawling, complex ruins of the Bronze Age palace at Knossos on the island of Crete provide a compelling answer. Excavated by Sir Arthur Evans in the early 20th century, the site is a maze of interconnected rooms, corridors, staircases, and storage magazines, a layout so bewildering that it is easy to see how it could have inspired the legend of the labyrinth. The very word may come from the Minoan term for a double-headed axe, the labris, a sacred symbol found everywhere at Knossos. The palace of the axe, the labyrinth, could simply have been this vast, intricate complex. Furthermore, the vibrant frescoes uncovered at the site depict a ritual known as bull leaping, where young athletes, both male and female, are shown gracefully vaulting over the backs of charging bulls. This central role of the bull in Minoan culture and religion gives powerful context to the myth. The Minotaur is more than a simple monster. It is a powerful symbol of the beast within the dark, untamed part of human nature that civilization must confine and control. It represents the fear of the other, the monstrous outsider used to define a community's own identity. On a geopolitical level, the legend likely reflects the tense and complex relationship between the powerful Minoan civilization of Crete and the emerging Mycenaean Greeks of the mainland. The story of Theseus's victory could be a mythological encoding of a real historical shift, the decline of Minoan power and the rise of the Mycenaeans, with the slaying of the monster symbolizing the overthrow of Cretan dominance. Imagine the visuals that bring this legend to life: the sprawling, sun-bleached ruins of Knossos, their red columns and faded frescoes hinting at a lost grandeur. Picture the dynamic ancient art of the bull-leaping ceremony, frozen in time, and the dramatic, shadowy artistic renditions of Theseus's final, desperate battle with the bull-headed man in the oppressive darkness of the maze. The Minotaur's story endures because it is a tragedy on many levels, a condemnation of human arrogance, a tale of monstrous otherness, and a chilling reminder of the mazes we build, both in stone and in our own minds. The song promised everything, a melody so perfect it revealed all the secrets of the world to any man who heard it. This was the lethal gift of the sirens, creatures of Greek myth whose island was a graveyard of ships and bones. In their earliest depictions on ancient pottery, they were not the beautiful mermaids we imagine today. They were hybrid monsters, birds with the heads of women, often shown playing flutes or lyres as they perched among the wrecked vessels of their victims. This harpy-like form spoke of a predatory nature, a being that was both alluring and fundamentally unnatural. It was only later, as their legend filtered through the centuries, that their avian features softened, their wings vanishing and their bird bodies transforming into the torsos of fish, merging with another seafaring terror to become the seductive, mermaid-like sirens of medieval lore. Their most defining moment comes to us from the epic journey of Odysseus. The cunning hero, forewarned by the sorceress Circe, knew he could not resist their call. He performed a brilliant act of psychological preparation. He ordered his crew to seal their ears with beeswax, rendering them deaf to the enchanting music. But for himself, he demanded a different solution. He wanted to hear the song. He had his men bind him tightly to the ship's mast with strong ropes, commanding them that no matter how much he begged, pleaded, or threatened, they were not to release him until they were far past the island and the song had faded into silence. Soon, the melody drifted across the water, a hypnotic harmony that promised unmatched wisdom and boundless joy. True to his nature, Odysseus was driven mad by its beauty. He strained against his bonds, his eyes wild, shouting orders to be set free. His men, deaf and obedient, only rowed harder, securing him tighter as they navigated the treacherous passage. This scene is a masterful metaphor for the human condition. The sirens represent any destructive temptation that calls to us, the seductive distractions that promise fulfillment but deliver only ruin. They are the siren song of addiction, of toxic relationships, of any all-consuming desire that pulls us away from our true path and onto the rocks of self-destruction. Odysseus's strategy is a lesson in self-awareness and discipline. He acknowledges his own weakness and creates a system to outsmart it, using his crew as a form of external willpower to survive an internal battle. The Greeks even gave this danger a place on the map, often associating the sirens with rocky islands off the coast of southern Italy, perhaps the Cyanus Islands, where the sound of rushing water through the stones could mimic a ghostly, beckoning choir. You can almost see the ancient vases depicting these birdwomen tormenting sailors, and the later romantic paintings showing beautiful figures on a rocky shore, their songs almost visible in the air as a ship veers fatally toward them. The legend endures because we all know the sound of our own personal sirens, and we must decide whether to plug our ears or, like Odysseus, have the courage to listen while remaining bound to the mast of our own resolve. The mournful cry of the banshee carries across the misty Irish hills, a sound of pure sorrow that chills the soul. Known in Gaelic as the Bean Shea, the woman of the ferry mound, she is a spirit whose appearance is as fluid as the fog. Sometimes she is a beautiful young woman with long, flowing hair, dressed in a shimmering gray cloak. At other times, she manifests as a hunched and haggard old crone, her eyes red from centuries of weeping. One of the most haunting images associated with her is the sight of this spectral figure kneeling by a stream in the dead of night, washing the blood-stained clothes of the person whose fate she has come to announce. This grim laundry is a final, undeniable portent. It is crucial to understand that the banshee is not a monster who causes death. She is a messenger from the otherworld, a herald of the inevitable. Her function is not to harm, but to warn, to prepare a family for the profound loss that is to come. This role ties her deeply to the ancient tradition of the Keeneed, the practiced mournful wailing performed by women at Irish funerals. The banshee is, in a sense, the supernatural embodiment of that communal grief, a solitary keener for the dying. Her connection is not to everyone, but specifically to the great old Gaelic families, the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Connors. She is a familial spirit, attached to a bloodline for generations, her lament a dark honor that marks a family's historic roots in the land. As waves of Irish immigrants left their homeland during the Great Famine, and in the years that followed, they carried this deeply personal legend with them in their hearts. The banshee crossed the Atlantic, her wail now heard in the new cities of Boston and New York, a piece of the old country's soul transplanted to a foreign shore. This adaptability shows how folklore serves as a vital tether to cultural identity, a comfort and a warning that traveled thousands of miles from its origin. While many cultures have their own death omens, from the Germanic Frau Birchter to the Slavic Vila, the banshee stands apart. She is not a trickster or a vengeful ghost. Her presence is one of solemn duty, a painful but necessary service for the family she watches over. Imagine the visual of a lone, cloaked figure on a rain-swept cliff, her mouth open in a silent scream that the wind carries for miles. Picture classic illustrations where she hovers just outside a castle window, her form half hidden by the mist, or reenactments of that piercing, ululating cry echoing through a silent, sleeping village. Her enduring power lies in this poignant duality, a figure of terror who is ultimately a servant of sorrow, reminding us that even death sends a messenger and that grief has a voice all its own. A flickering light dances just beyond the safety of the path, a spectral lantern beckoning from the heart of the marsh. This is the Will-o'-the-Wisp, a ghost light known by countless names across the world, from the Jack-o'-lantern of English folklore to the Ignis Fatuus, the foolish fire of medieval science. These elusive glows have haunted bogs, swamps, and lonely cemeteries for centuries, appearing as faint, bobbing spheres of blue or green light that vanish the moment you draw near. The legends woven around them are as varied as the cultures that feared them. In some tales, they are the souls of unbaptized children or those denied a proper Christian burial, condemned to wander the earth with a lonely flame. In others, they are mischievous fairies or goblins like the Welsh PWCA, deliberately leading late-night travelers off the safe road and into quicksand or deep water. The light would dance enticingly, always just out of reach, tricking a person into a desperate chase until they were hopelessly lost in the treacherous terrain. This was not merely a spooky story. It served a vital, practical purpose for communities living near dangerous wetlands. The legend was a powerful, memorable warning to keep children and travelers away from the unstable ground and hidden pools of the marsh, a folkloric fence around a very real physical danger. The scientific explanation, while robbing the phenomenon of its spirits, reveals a different kind of magic. When organic matter like plants and animals decompose in the oxygen-poor environment of a swamp, they release methane gas. This gas can combine with phosphine and diphosphane, compounds of phosphorus that ignite spontaneously upon contact with the air. The result is a brief, flickering flame or a cool, glowing light that hovers over the bog, a natural chemiluminescence born from the very cycle of death and decay. Imagine the eerie beauty of a marsh at twilight, the deep shadows gathering between the reeds. Visualize time-lapse footage capturing these real, albeit rare, methane flares igniting just above the water's surface, their light a stark, silent contrast to the surrounding darkness. Now picture the spooky artistic depictions from old storybooks, showing a gnarled, grinning spirit holding a lantern, luring a confused knight on his horse toward a bottomless mire. The enduring power of the Will-o'-the-Wisp lies in this perfect union of natural fact and human fear, a mysterious light that is both a chemical reaction and a timeless cautionary tale about the dangers of following a seductive glow into the unknown. A beautiful woman by day becomes a creature of pure nightmare after sunset. The aswang of Philippine folklore is not just one monster, but an entire category of shape-shifting horrors, each more terrifying than the last. By daylight, she might be your charming neighbor, a friendly face in the village market, but when darkness falls, she sheds her human skin and transforms. Her most common form is a winged predator, soaring silently over rooftops on leathery wings. Its most chilling weapon is a long, thin, proboscis-like tongue, hollow and needle-sharp. This tongue is how it feeds, slipping silently through cracks in the bamboo walls of a nipa hut to seek out sleeping victims. It drinks the blood of the living, but its most feared prey is the unborn. The aswang is infamous for using its tongue to extract a fetus from its mother's womb, leaving the woman to wake to a tragic and inexplicable loss. This grotesque predation explains the creature's deep-rooted cultural role. In a time before modern medicine, the legend of the aswang provided a framework for understanding heartbreaking tragedies like miscarriages, stillbirths, and wasting diseases that had no other apparent cause. It gave a name and a face to the invisible, random cruelty of fate. The fear of the aswang also served as a powerful social tool. It enforced community norms, warning pregnant women to stay indoors at night and encouraging families to maintain strong, close-knit households. It was a story that taught vigilance and mutual protection. To guard against this terror, communities developed a whole arsenal of defenses. the Aswang is said to have a powerful aversion to garlic and salt, common household items that could be placed on windowsills and doorways. Religious artifacts like crucifixes and rosaries were also believed to be potent deterrents, creating a spiritual barrier the creature could not cross. Villagers would hang amulets known as anting and place blessed palm fronds over their doors. Imagine the visuals of a dark Filipino village nestled in the jungle, the only light coming from oil lamps inside the huts. Picture the intricate hand-carved amulets hanging by doorways and the dramatic artistic renditions of the Aswang's transformation. A beautiful woman's face contorting as wings tear from her back and her mouth opens to reveal that terrifying serpentine tongue. While it shares similarities with the Western vampire, the Aswang is a far more complex and intimate terror. It is not a foreign noble from a distant castle, but a hidden enemy within the community itself, a betrayal that strikes at the most vulnerable moments of life and turns the safety of home into a place of unspeakable dread. But the flickering will-o'-the-wisp is a simple trick of gas and air compared to a being born from the heart of the fire itself. In the vast, silent deserts of the Middle East, a belief persists in a race of beings as ancient as the wind, creatures woven from smokeless flame. These are the jinn, and their story is one of profound complexity, woven into the very fabric of faith and folklore. They are not demons, but a separate creation made by God from a subtle, scorching energy long before humanity was shaped from clay. They inhabit a world parallel to our own, an unseen dimension where they live, love, and exercise free will just as we do. This free will is the key to understanding them. Jinn can be pious and benevolent, neutral and indifferent, or malicious and wicked, making them as unpredictable and varied as humankind itself. Their prominence in the world's second largest religion is absolute. The Quran has an entire chapter named for them, detailing how a group of jinn heard the Prophet's recitation and embraced the message, proving they too are subject to divine judgment and capable of salvation. Yet, in the rich tapestry of Arabian folklore, the jinn are often the explanation for the unexplainable. A sudden illness, a fit of madness, an object misplaced in the home, all could be the work of a mischievous or malevolent jinn. The strange, whirling pillars of sand known as dust devils were seen not as weather, but as the visible movement of these fiery beings racing across the dunes. The most powerful stories, however, speak of control over them. King Solomon, a prophet gifted with dominion over the natural world, was also given command of the jinn. Legends say he did not request their service but compelled it. Using a magical ring inscribed with the name of God, he forced legions of jinn to build his magnificent temple, laboring on a scale and with a speed no human hands could match. This was not a partnership but a subjugation of a wild, elemental force for a divine purpose. The journey of the jinn into the Western imagination began with the translation of 1001 Nights. Here, they were transformed into the gennies we recognize today, powerful spirits trapped in lamps and bound to grant wishes. This romanticized image, however, is a pale shadow of their original nature. They are not wish-granting slaves, but a whole other society of sentient beings, with their own kings, laws, and cities hidden in the desolate places of the earth. Visualize the stark, beautiful emptiness of the desert at sunset, a landscape perfect for unseen inhabitants. Picture ancient Islamic art, where calligraphy and geometric patterns hint at the unseen world rather than depicting it directly. Modern films and television have tried to capture their essence, from the smoky, terrifying forms in horror cinema to more nuanced portrayals that touch on their ancient, conflicted nature. The legend of the jinn endures because it addresses a fundamental human sensation, the eerie feeling that we are not alone, that just beyond the veil of our perception, an entire world of powerful, willful beings is watching, waiting, and living out their own epic stories. Its wingspan was said to blot out the sun, a feathered leviathan of the sky that dwarfed every other creature. This is the roc, the ultimate bird of prey from the legends of the Middle East. In the fantastical voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, the roc is a force of nature. The stories tell of an island that is not land at all, but the bird's colossal back, and of a valley of diamonds guarded by nests built from entire tree trunks. Most famously, Sinbad recounts how he and his crew witnessed the roc returning to its nest carrying a fully grown elephant in its talons, a creature it would then drop from a great height to crack its shell before feeding the pieces to its enormous chicks. The image is staggering, a predator so immense that the largest land animal becomes its simple prey. This was not just a story of a big bird, it was a narrative device to illustrate the sheer, overwhelming scale of the unknown world, a place where the rules of nature as men knew them were written. The legend, however, did not spring from nothing. It was likely born from the convergence of real, if misunderstood, creatures encountered by Arab traders sailing the Indian Ocean. One powerful inspiration was the elephant bird of Madagascar, a flightless giant that stood over 3 meters tall and weighed nearly half a ton. While it could not fly, its massive bones and enormous, thick-shelled eggs, the largest single cells to have ever existed, would have been a breathtaking discovery for any explorer. A trader returning from Madagascar with stories and perhaps a piece of one of these gigantic eggs could easily have sparked tales of a bird of unimaginable size. Another candidate is the formidable African crowned eagle, a real raptor known for its power and aggression. While it hunts monkeys, not pachyderms, its behavior of carrying heavy prey through the air could have been exaggerated over countless campfires and sea voyages, its talons growing larger with every telling until they were capable of lifting an elephant. The legend traveled on the trade winds, carried by merchants from the bazaars of Baghdad to the map rooms of Europe. Cartographers, trying to chart the edges of the known world, populated their blank spaces with these wonders. You can see the roc immortalized on medieval maps, a terrifying bird sketched in the margins of Africa or near the islands of the Indian Ocean, a warning and a wonder for any sailor brave enough to venture there. Visualize the stark contrast between the fanciful paintings of Sinbad, lashed to the roc's leg, a tiny figure against a mountain of feathers, and the sobering reality of the elephant bird's skeleton in a museum. Its frame a silent testament to the real giants that once walked the earth, proving that sometimes the truth is strange enough to birth the most magnificent of lies. The water that hides the Loch Ness monster also births a far more intimate horror, a predator that does not lurk in the deep but waits patiently on the shore. This is the kelpie, a shape-shifting spirit of Scottish lochs and rivers that wears its most seductive disguise, the form of a magnificent, sleek horse. It would appear grazing innocently by the water's edge, its coat often described as jet black or stark white, a seemingly tame creature offering an easy ride to a weary traveler. But the moment a person mounted its back, a terrible magic took hold. The kelpie's skin became as adhesive as glue, trapping the rider in place. With a triumphant, supernatural speed, it would then charge directly into the deepest part of the water, plunging its victim into the icy depths to drown. Some legends whisper that the kelpie was not content with mere drowning, that it was a carnivorous spirit that would then devour its prey, leaving only the liver floating to the surface as a grim token of the encounter. You could always recognize this deadly apparition by one chilling detail. Its hide was perpetually soaking wet and cold as the grave to the touch, a permanent reminder of the watery grave from which it came. This was more than a ghost story. It was a vital, practical warning told for generations. In a land crisscrossed by countless lochs and fast-flowing rivers, the legend of the kelpie was a powerful tool to frighten children away from dangerous, unstable banks where a slip could mean a deadly fall into cold, unforgiving water. It gave a terrifying face to a very real, everyday peril. Yet the kelpie had a cousin in the highlands that was even more fearsome. The each-uisht or waterhorse was a far more vicious and cunning variant. While the Kelpie was primarily a spirit of moving rivers and lochs, the Uist was a creature of the sea lochs and pools. Its deception was even more profound, for it could take on a human form to mingle with people. But its true, ravenous nature was its undoing. In one famous tale, a water horse in human form is given shelter by a kind family. When a slice of meat falls to the floor, the creature instinctively pounces on it with an animalistic hunger, revealing its monstrous identity and sending the family fleeing in terror. The visual legacy of these legends is haunting. Imagine the mist rising from a still loch at dusk, and there, standing in the reeds, is a beautiful, solitary horse, its coat glistening with an unnatural dampness. Picture the dramatic, romanticized paintings of the 19th century, capturing the moment the Kelpie rears back, its human rider screaming in terror as they are dragged beneath the dark water. And in the modern day, you can witness this myth made tangible in the stunning, 30-meter-high steel Kelpie statues that stand in Falkirk, Scotland. These colossal horse heads, their flowing manes and powerful necks captured in gleaming metal, are a breathtaking tribute to the story that once kept generations of Scottish children safely away from the water's edge, a permanent monument to a legend born from the deep, primal fear of what waits just beneath a calm surface. The terror of the Kelpie was a warning from the water, but another kind of guardian was forged from the very earth. In the heart of Prague's old Jewish ghetto, a legend took root of a protector sculpted from river clay. This was the golem, a silent, hulking figure brought to life through ancient sacred rites. The most enduring tale centers on the revered Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel in the 16th century. Faced with the constant threat of violent pogroms and blood libel accusations against his people, the rabbi turned to the profound mysteries of Kabbalah. He sought to create a defender, a being of immense physical power that would shield the community from its persecutors. The creation was a solemn, ritualistic act. The rabbi, along with his assistants, journeyed to the banks of the Vieltova River to gather the purest clay. They sculpted this mud into the form of a giant man, a powerful but lifeless body lying on the mikveh floor. Then, through intense prayer and mystical incantation, they performed the ultimate act of animation. The rabbi placed a shem, a parchment inscribed with one of the secret names of God, into the creature's mouth. Alternatively, in the most famous version, he inscribed the Hebrew word emet, meaning truth, upon the golem's forehead. At that moment, the clay giant opened its eyes. It rose to its feet, a servant of tremendous strength, obedient to its creator's commands. The golem had no voice and no soul. It was a perfect servant, tirelessly performing manual labor and patrolling the narrow lanes of the ghetto, its mere presence deterring attacks. But its power was as dangerous as it was protective. Some stories tell of the golem growing larger and stronger with each passing day, its strength becoming unpredictable. In one tragic account, the creature is mistakenly sent to fetch water and continues its task with mindless obedience, flooding the rabbi's own house. This hints at the legend's deepest warning, the peril of a creation that lacks a moral compass. The golem was a force of pure, unthinking power, and without precise control, it risked becoming the very source of the destruction it was meant to prevent. Deactivation was as symbolic as its birth. To return the golem to inert clay, Rabbi Loew would erase or remove the first letter of the word on its forehead. Emet, truth, became met, death. The divine spark of life was withdrawn, and the giant would crumble back into the dust from which it came. According to lore, the lifeless body of the golem was then stored in the attic of the Old New Synagogue in Prague, where it waits to this day, a silent sentinel ready to be awakened if the people are ever in peril again. Visualize the shadowy, cobblestone streets of the old Jewish quarter, the imposing form of the synagogue against the night sky. Picture historical woodcuts showing the rabbi and his clay giant, and the intricate, mystical diagrams from Kabbalistic texts that speak of such creations. The golem is far more than a simple monster story. it is a profound exploration of humanity's role as a creator. It asks a question that would later haunt Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. What responsibility do we bear for the power we unleash? The golem is a timeless symbol of the double-edged sword of creation, a force that can protect but can also, without wisdom, turn against its maker and destroy everything it was built to save. The ancient world hummed with a different kind of divine presence, one not of serene enlightenment but of cosmic bureaucracy and raw terrestrial power. In the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, the gods known as the Anunnaki were not distant creators but intimately involved rulers. Their name itself speaks to their lineage, often translated as the princely offspring of Anu, the sky god, and Kai, the earth. In the earliest Sumerian myths, they were the great gods, the 50 mighty deities who decreed the fates of humanity. They sat in judgment over the dead in the gloomy underworld and were the unseen forces behind the fertility of the land and the rise and fall of kings. They were served by the lesser Igigi gods who toiled on their behalf until, in one famous story, they rebelled against the exhausting labor. Visualize the immense, tiered ziggurats reaching for the heavens, not as lonely temples, but as literal stairways for these deities to descend to their earthly domains. See the intricate cylinder seals rolled across wet clay to leave an impression of these powerful, often bearded figures, symbols of an ancient and complex theology that saw the divine in the very administration of the world. This was their original role, a foundational part of the first great civilizations. Then, in the 20th century, this established understanding was turned on its head by a single, controversial voice. The author Zecharia Sitchin looked at the same myths and saw not allegory but ancient newspaper reports. In his Earth Chronicles series, he proposed a radical reinterpretation. He claimed the Anunnaki were not gods at all, but astronauts from a hypothetical planet called Nibiru, which he said follows a long, elliptical orbit through our solar system. According to Sitchin, these advanced beings came to Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago in search of gold to repair their planet's damaged atmosphere. Needing a labor force for their mines, they genetically engineered a primitive hominid, splicing their own DNA with that of Homo erectus to create Homo sapiens, a slave race built for manual labor. In this narrative, all of human civilization, from agriculture to mathematics, was not our own discovery, but a gift from these extraterrestrial masters to manage their new workforce. The Great Flood, in his telling, was not a divine punishment, but a catastrophic event related to the gravitational pull of Nibiru, and human myths of gods and giants are simply the foggy, ancestral memory of our alien creators. This theory, captivating as it is, faces a mountain of criticism from the very experts who dedicate their lives to studying these ancient texts. Mainstream historians, archaeologists, and linguists almost universally reject Sitchin's conclusions, and their objections are not based on closed-mindedness but on the evidence itself. The core issue lies in Sitchin's translations of Sumerian and Akkadian cuneiform. Scholars argue that he took words and phrases out of context, mistranslated key terms to fit his narrative, and combined elements from different myths written centuries apart to create a cohesive story that never existed in the ancient world. For example, the word Nibiru in Babylonian astronomy refers to a celestial crossing point, often associated with the planet Jupiter or a metaphysical concept, not a 12th planet. The word Anunnaki itself has no etymological connection to the concept of astronauts or space travelers. Visualize a split screen. On one side, a traditional scholar's translation of a cuneiform tablet describing a religious ritual, and on the other, Sitchin's interpretation of the same symbols as a technical manual for a spaceship. The chasm between these two readings is vast. The ancient astronaut theory, for all its popular appeal, asks us to disregard the cultural and linguistic context of an entire civilization in favor of a modern science fiction narrative projected onto the past. It replaces the complex, spiritually rich world of Mesopotamian belief with a story where humanity's greatest achievements are merely the hand-me-downs of a superior alien race. An idea that raises profound questions about why we are so drawn to the notion that we were not the authors of our own destiny. A land before time was shaped by a single, colossal presence. In the beginning, as Aboriginal Australians tell the story of the dreaming, the world was a flat, barren plain. Then the rainbow serpent awoke from her slumber beneath the earth and pushed her way to the surface. As this immense being traveled across the empty land, her massive body carved the very first rivers, gorges, and deep, permanent waterholes. Where she rested, she left the valleys and the mountains. This was not a gentle creation, but a powerful, physical act that gave the land its form and its spirit. The rainbow serpent is one of the oldest continuous religious figures in human history, a creator god whose story has been told for thousands of generations. She is the ultimate source of life, a being intrinsically linked to the water that sustains all things. When the rains come, she is said to arc across the sky, her body a bridge between the earth and the heavens, filling the rivers and waterholes she created long ago. She represents fertility, the renewal of the land, and the sacredness of the water sources that make life possible in a harsh environment. Yet her power is not one-sided. The rainbow serpent is a being of profound duality. She is the life-giver, but she is also the judge. If people break sacred law, if they trespass on forbidden sites or act with disrespect towards the land, she can become a destructive force. She might cause a great flood, or she might stop the rains, bringing drought and famine. She is the ultimate embodiment of nature itself, both nurturing and fearsomely punitive, demanding respect and balance from all living things. The deep time of this belief is etched into the very rock of the continent. In Western Arnhem Land, you can find rock paintings of the rainbow serpent that are estimated to be over 6,000 years old, some of the oldest known figurative art on the planet. These ancient images, often showing a long, sinuous creature with a crest or a beard, are not mere pictures. They are a direct connection to the dreaming, a visual scripture that has been maintained and repainted for millennia. That artistic tradition is vibrantly alive today, with modern indigenous artists reinterpreting the rainbow serpent in dazzling, colorful dot paintings, her form woven into intricate patterns that map the living landscape. Visualize the stunning, rust-red gorges of Kakadu National Park, the serpentine path of a river seen from above, and the powerful, ancient forms painted on sheltered rock faces. See the transition to a contemporary canvas where the same ancestral being shimmers with dots of brilliant color, a testament to a story that is as vital now as it was at the dawn of human memory. The rainbow serpent reminds us that the land itself is a sacred text, and that some stories are not just told, but lived in every river, every waterhole, and every seasonal storm. From the life-giving waters of the rainbow serpent, we plunge into a sea of a much darker nature. The crashing waves of the North Atlantic are the domain of the Fomorians, a race of monstrous beings from the deepest layers of Irish myth. They were not gods of beauty or order, but semi-divine embodiments of nature's cruelest and most destructive whims. Their very forms were a testament to this chaotic essence, often described with grotesque, asymmetrical features that defied natural symmetry. Some were giants with a single, piercing eye in the center of their forehead. Others had but one arm or one leg, their bodies appearing as unfinished, terrifying sculptures of flesh and power. They were the living manifestation of a storm-racked coast, the hidden danger in the fog, and the fury of a winter gale. Their malevolence was directed at the very first settlers of Ireland. Long before the rise of the famous gods, the Partholonians and the Nemedians arrived to claim the island. Each time, the Fomorians descended from their shadowy fortresses to oppress them, demanding crippling tributes of grain and children, their presence a constant shadow of subjugation and fear. These early battles were not glorious, but grim struggles for survival against an enemy that seemed as much a part of the hostile landscape as the rocky soil itself. The Fomorians' most famous conflict, however, was reserved for the Tuatha Dé Danann, the tribe of the gods. In the epic Cath Mage Tuaird, the Second Battle of Moytura, the two forces clashed in a war for the soul of Ireland. The Tuatha Dé Danann represented skill, magic, and a kind of civilized order, while the Fomorians stood for raw, untamed chaos. Their king, the fearsome Balor of the Evil Eye, possessed a gaze so venomous that it could destroy entire armies on the spot. His eyelid was so heavy it took 4 men to lift it, turning him into a living siege weapon, a personification of a sudden, annihilating plague or a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. This epic struggle can be seen as the mythological expression of a fundamental human conflict, the fight to establish a safe, predictable society against the unpredictable violence of the natural world. The Fomorians were the chaotic sea, their raids mirroring the storm surges that could wipe out coastal settlements without warning. Their grotesque forms may be folk memories of early, hostile invaders from across the water, their foreign armor and weapons distorted by terror into descriptions of monstrous physiology. Or perhaps they are the ancient memory of natural disasters, of years when the crops failed and the sea refused to give up its fish, personified into a race of giants that must be defeated for life to continue. Visualize the dark, churning seascapes, the foam-capped waves looking like the grasping hands of unseen beings. Picture the classical illustrations of this mythic war, the noble warriors of the Tuatha Dé Danann facing down the misshapen Fomorian hordes under a stormy sky. See the intricate, swirling patterns of Celtic art, where the beautiful order of the knotwork stands in stark contrast to the formless terror these monsters represented. The Fomorians were a necessary darkness in the Celtic worldview, the ever-present threat that gave meaning to the hard-won peace, a reminder that civilization is always just one battle away from being swallowed by the sea. A creature born from an impossible union soars above the chivalric tales of the Renaissance. The hippogriff combines the most majestic features of 2 noble beasts, the fierce, regal front half of an eagle, complete with a sharp, hooked beak, powerful talons, and vast, feathered wings, seamlessly joined to the strong, graceful body and hindquarters of a stallion. This hybrid was more than a simple monster, it was a symbol of a profound and unlikely harmony. In medieval bestiaries, the griffin was said to hunt horses, making them natural, sworn enemies. For a griffin and a mare to produce offspring was therefore a poetic impossibility, a clear sign that this creature represented something miraculous. Its very existence was a testament to the power of love, or perhaps of powerful magic, to bridge even the most deeply rooted divides and create something entirely new and wonderful. The hippogriff first took flight in the literary imagination of the 16th century Italian poet Ludovico Ariosto. In his sprawling epic Orlando Furioso, the hippogriff is not a wild beast but a magnificent, intelligent steed. It is ridden by the heroic Saracen knight Rogero, who uses the creature's incredible speed and ability to fly to rescue his beloved, the warrior maiden Bradamante, and to travel across the world on his chivalric quests. In this context, the hippogriff was the ultimate symbol of knightly virtue and romantic pursuit, a creature of such noble bearing that it was fit only for the most heroic of riders. You can see its classical representation in the grand oil paintings of the Renaissance, where it is often depicted with a glossy coat and richly detailed wings soaring over idealized landscapes. Its image also found a home in heraldry, emblazoned on coats of arms to represent speed, power, and the lofty aspirations of a noble family. Yet for most of the modern world, the hippogriff was reintroduced in a single, unforgettable form, Buckbeak from the Harry Potter series. This portrayal captured the creature's complex nature perfectly, its proud, sensitive demeanor demanding respect and proper etiquette from any who would approach it. A single bow could earn its loyalty, while a moment of disrespect could result in a dangerous swipe of its talons. This modern incarnation brought the ancient symbol to life for millions, reminding us that even the most impossible and noble of creatures operates by its own ancient code of honor, a bridge between the wild and the tame, the earthly and the aerial. Its venom was said to be so potent that it could poison the very air around it, and its gaze was a death sentence. This is the basilisk, the legendary king of serpents from the darkest corners of European folklore. Our earliest detailed account comes from the Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder, who described it not as a giant but as a small snake no more than 12 fingers in length. Yet this diminutive creature was crowned with a white, speckled mark upon its head, a diadem of death that gave it its regal title. Pliny wrote that its hiss would drive all other snakes away, and that its mere breath could wither shrubs and crack stones. This was a creature whose entire existence was an affront to life itself, but the legend did not remain a simple, if terrifying, serpent. In the medieval imagination, the basilisk underwent a bizarre and grotesque transformation. It merged with another mythical beast to become a hybrid horror, the cockatrice. This new form was a serpent with the head, comb, and legs of a rooster, a blasphemous fusion that crawled from a most unnatural birth. It was said to be born from a round, yolkless egg, laid by a 7-year-old rooster and hatched in the foul warmth of a toad or serpent. This impossible origin story made it a symbol of unnatural evil, a perversion of the natural order from its very conception. Faced with such a dreadful foe, people sought any possible defense, and the legends provided a strange arsenal of weaknesses. The scent of a weasel was believed to be fatal to the basilisk, and the creature was said to flee from the crowing of a rooster. The most famous countermeasure, however, was a simple mirror. To look upon the basilisk was to die, but to force the basilisk to look upon itself was its own undoing. The sight of its own reflection would supposedly turn its lethal gaze inward, causing the monster to perish by its own power. This idea made the basilisk a powerful symbol in Christian iconography, representing the devil whose own evil ultimately destroys him. You can see its fearsome image glaring from the pages of illuminated bestiaries, a warning against sin and pride. Alchemists adopted it as a symbol for the volatile and deadly elements they worked with, a reminder of the peril inherent in their art. And in modern times, its legacy was cemented for a new generation in the form of the monstrous serpent in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, a creature that petrified its victims with a look and could only be confronted by a reflection. The basilisk endures because it embodies a fear of a corruption so absolute that it cannot be faced directly, a poison that requires not strength but cleverness and self-reflection to overcome. With the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle, the griffin stands as a perfect fusion of two kings ruling both the earth and the sky. This majestic hybrid first stalked its way into human imagination not in story books but in the ancient art of the Near East over 5,000 years ago. Carved into Mesopotamian cylinder seals and painted on the walls of Minoan palaces, it was depicted as a formidable guardian, a sentinel posted at the gates of the divine and the thresholds of immense wealth. Its role was clear from the beginning: to protect what was most sacred and valuable from the grasp of thieves and the unworthy. In the vast, gold-rich steppes of Scythia, nomadic artisans crafted stunning gold artifacts featuring the creature, its powerful form a symbol of the very treasures it was believed to watch over. The Greeks later adopted this magnificent beast, weaving it deeply into their own mythology. Here, the griffin became a loyal companion to the gods, most notably serving the sun god Apollo. It was said to pull his chariot across the heavens, a fitting steed for a deity of light and prophecy. But the griffin's most famous mythological role was that of a vigilant protector in a perpetual epic conflict. Far to the north, in the misty lands of Hyperborea, the griffins guarded vast hoards of gold from their sworn enemies, the one-eyed Arimaspians. These monstrous humans mounted on horseback would launch constant raids to steal the treasure, leading to an endless, brutal war between the species. This struggle was more than a simple monster story. It represented the eternal clash between civilization and chaos, between the sacred duty of guardianship and the primal greed of plunder. The sheer power of the griffin lies in its composite nature. It draws the majesty and terrestrial dominion of the lion, the king of the beasts, and combines it with the keen sight, speed, and aerial supremacy of the eagle, the king of the birds. This union created a being that was more than the sum of its parts, a symbol of ultimate power that transcended the boundaries of the natural world. It embodied divine authority, unparalleled strength, and vigilant wisdom. This potent symbolism ensured the griffin's immortality long after the fall of the ancient empires. It soared effortlessly into the medieval world, where it was eagerly adopted by heralds and scribes. In the colorful pages of illuminated bestiaries, it was painted with meticulous detail, its feathers and fur rendered in brilliant inks. On the battlefield, its image was emblazoned on shields and banners, a heraldic emblem that communicated the noble virtues of courage, leadership, and military prowess to all who saw it. You can trace its lineage through the coats of arms of countless noble families and cities, its form forever frozen in stained glass and carved stone, a timeless guardian of lineage and honor. The throne of God itself is guarded by beings whose true forms defy all human expectation. To enter the highest ranks of the angelic host is to encounter the cherubim, and they are nothing like the plump, playful infants of Renaissance frescoes. The prophet Ezekiel provides a description of staggering complexity, a vision of divine guardians that is both beautiful and terrifying. He describes them as living creatures with 4 distinct faces, that of a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Their bodies gleam like burning coals, and they move with a precision that defies physics, never needing to turn because a different face gazes in each cardinal direction. They are covered in eyes, seeing all, and their 4 wings produce a sound like the roar of mighty waters, the very voice of God's glory. These were the formidable sentinels placed to guard the entrance to Eden with a flaming sword, not gentle babies but the unwavering protectors of divine holiness. Imagine the visual of a detailed diagram mapping out Ezekiel's vision, the 4 faces, the interconnected wheels within wheels, and the sheer, overwhelming presence of these celestial beings. In a separate, equally awe-inspiring vision, the prophet Isaiah describes another order of angels existing in the immediate presence of God. These are the seraphim, whose name means the burning ones. They are beings of pure, consuming fire, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they cover their faces, unable to bear the direct sight of God's glory. With 2 they cover their feet, a sign of humility, and with the remaining 2 they fly, ceaselessly circling the throne. Their eternal cry is a triple declaration: Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, a sound that shakes the very foundations of the temple. Visualize the shimmering gold of a Byzantine mosaic, capturing these 6-winged figures in a circle of divine light, their forms almost abstract in their radiant power. The journey from these biblical visions to the popular imagery of today is a story of theological simplification and artistic reinterpretation. Over centuries, the overwhelming and complex nature of the cherubim and seraphim was gradually softened to fit human comprehension and artistic convention. The multi-faced, multi-winged cherub was slowly stripped of its fearsome attributes, its form distilled and minimized. By the Renaissance, what remained was the putto, a charming, winged child that symbolized innocent love. Similarly, the burning, 6-winged seraphim were often reduced to a more manageable figure, a beautiful human form with a single pair of wings. This transformation can be traced on canvas, from the intricate, symbolic hierarchies in medieval illuminated manuscripts to the more relatable, humanized angels of painters like Raphael. Why did this happen? Perhaps because the true biblical descriptions were simply too alien, too overwhelming for the human mind to hold. The chubby cherub and the gentle archangel are comforting images, but they are a far cry from the blazing, many-eyed guardians who serve not as messengers to humanity, but as attendants to the absolute and terrifying majesty of the divine. From the celestial fire of the seraphim, we descend into the crushing, primordial abyss. The Hebrew scriptures speak of a beast coiled in the darkness of the deep, a creature of such raw power it defies all human comprehension. This is the Leviathan, the ultimate sea monster, whose name evokes an untamable chaos that existed before creation itself. In the book of Job, God himself confronts the suffering Job with a series of unanswerable questions, pointing to the Leviathan as the pinnacle of a world beyond human mastery. Can you put a hook in its nose or pierce its jaw with a cord? Its back is made of rows of shields, sealed together so tightly that no air can come between them. Its sneezing flashes with light, and its eyes are like the rays of the dawn. It leaves a shining wake in the water, and when it rises, the mighty are afraid. This is not a creature to be hunted or tamed, but a force of nature that answers to no one but its divine creator. The Leviathan appears again in the Psalms, where it is the many-headed monster crushed by God at the beginning of time, and in Isaiah, where it is the twisting, fleeing serpent whose future slaying signifies God's ultimate victory over all forms of chaos and oppression. This terrifying figure did not spring from a vacuum. Its origins lie in the older Canaanite myths of Ugarit, where the storm god Baal does battle with a similar sea dragon named Lotan, a slippery serpent with 7 heads. The Hebrew authors adopted this powerful image and transformed it, stripping the other gods of their power and reserving the conquest of the sea monster for Yahweh alone. Theologically, the Leviathan became a profound symbol. It represents the chaotic, untamed forces that constantly threaten to overwhelm the order of creation, the embodiment of evil political tyranny, and the sheer, mindless power of nature that humanity can never hope to control. Yet, in a stunning twist of Jewish eschatology, this monster of chaos is not simply destroyed. It is given a purpose at the end of days. Ancient rabbinic traditions speak of a great feast for the righteous in the world to come, the messianic banquet where the flesh of the Leviathan will be served as the main course. Its destruction becomes a source of sustenance and celebration, a symbol of God's final triumph where even the most terrifying forces of chaos are redeemed and transformed into a blessing for the faithful. Visualize the ancient Near Eastern cylinder seals, their intricate carvings showing a hero god locked in combat with a massive, multi-headed serpent. Picture the dramatic classical paintings that try to capture the sheer scale of the beast, its coils lost in a storm-tossed sea. See the old hand-drawn maps with their cryptic Latin warnings, "Here be dragons," a direct descendant of the Leviathan's legend, marking the edges of the known world with a primal, shuddering fear. Yet the Leviathan is not alone in its cosmic might. The very same chapter of the book of Job introduces its terrestrial equal, a creature of such immense power it seems to be the land itself given life. This is the behemoth, a beast that embodies the raw, untamed strength of the earth. Its description is one of overwhelming physicality. We are told it feeds on grass like an ox, a deceptively simple diet for a being of such colossal scale. Its true power lies in its core, with strength concentrated in its loins and a fearsome force dwelling in the muscles of its belly. The most debated and striking detail is its tail, described as stiff and massive, moving like a cedar tree. This single line has fueled centuries of speculation, as the swaying of a great cedar suggests a tale of tremendous length and weight, unlike that of any ordinary animal. For generations, scholars and naturalists have tried to identify a real-world counterpart for this biblical giant. The most common interpretations point to the largest land animals known to the ancient world. The hippopotamus, with its barrel-shaped body, immense strength, and territorial ferocity, is a compelling candidate. Its tail, while not cedar-like, is short and strong, and its nature captures the untamable wildness of the behemoth. The elephant is another obvious choice, a creature whose power and size are legendary, its trunk perhaps being poetically reimagined as a mighty, swaying tail. Yet for many, these familiar animals feel insufficient to capture the sheer, monstrous scale implied in the text. This has led to a more thrilling possibility that the behemoth was inspired by the fossilized bones of prehistoric giants. Imagine an ancient herdsman stumbling upon the immense skeleton of a dinosaur like a sauropod, its vertebrae as large as boulders and its tailbone stretching out like a petrified forest. Such a discovery would defy all contemporary understanding of the animal kingdom, naturally giving rise to stories of a primordial beast that once shook the earth. Visualize the stark contrast between a documentary clip of a hippo surfacing in a river, powerful yet knowable, and a dramatic artist's rendering of the behemoth as a nightmarish fusion of elephant and dinosaur, its cedar-like tail sweeping through a primordial landscape. See the illuminated pages of medieval Bibles where scribes painted the behemoth in vibrant inks, often as a symbol of earthly power and material wealth, its form a testament to the limits of human comprehension. Ultimately, like the Leviathan of the deep, the behemoth serves a profound theological purpose. It is not a monster to be conquered by man, but a masterpiece of divine creation, a living reminder that the world contains forces of such magnificent power that they bow to no will but that of their maker. Its very strangeness was its message, a creature stitched together from the parts of other animals, a walking paradox. This is the questing beast, the most bizarre and elusive monster in all of Arthurian romance. Its appearance was a herald of confusion, with the head and neck of a serpent, the spotted body of a leopard, the powerful haunches of a lion, and the delicate, cloven feet of a hart, a deer. But its most unnerving feature was not something you could see. From its belly came a constant cacophonous sound, the baying and yapping of 30 pairs of hounds, forever questing, forever hunting, a noise that drove knights to madness as they pursued it through the tangled forests of loggers. This was not a beast of physical terror, but of psychological torment, a symbol of the endless, futile chase. Its primary hunter was not Arthur or Lancelot, but the Saracen knight Sir Palomes, a man of immense skill and honor whose destiny was irrevocably tied to the creature. His entire chivalric career was defined by this pursuit, a lifelong quest for a goal he could never capture, mirroring the way worldly ambitions can consume a life without ever offering true fulfillment. The beast's origin story reveals the depth of its symbolism. It was often said to be born from a profound act of moral corruption, a sin of incest that cursed the very land. One version tells of a princess who lusted after her own brother, and when he rejected her, she falsely accused him of assault. Their mother, in a fit of vengeful rage, cursed her daughter, proclaiming she would give birth to a monster that reflected the twisted nature of her desire. The questing beast was that punishment made flesh, a physical manifestation of a spiritual sickness, forever roaming the world as a reminder of sin's consequences. You can see this complex creature leaping from the pages of illuminated manuscripts, its composite body painted in vivid inks of red, blue, and gold, the artist struggling to reconcile its impossible anatomy. Later, intricate tapestries would attempt to capture the scene, with Sir Palomes in his gleaming armor, lance couched, chasing the beast through a forest woven with countless threads. Modern fantasy artists have reimagined it with breathtaking detail, emphasizing the eerie dissonance of its serpentine neck and the haunting sound perpetually spilling from its core. The questing beast was more than a monster to be slain. It was a moving lesson, a warning that some pursuits, no matter how noble they seem, are inherently empty, and that the noise of the chase can sometimes drown out the quiet voice of purpose. A creature of shadow waits where the lane twists into the mist, its nature as shifting as the Irish weather. This is the puka, a being of pure ambiguity that defies any simple label of good or evil. It is a master of forms, most often appearing as a magnificent, jet-black horse with a mane that flows like liquid night and eyes that burn with an unsettling golden light. In this guise, it seems to offer a ride to a lost traveler, but to accept is to be taken on a terrifying, breakneck journey across the entire countryside, over hedges and stone walls, through rivers and bogs before being deposited, shaken and humbled back where you started. Alternatively, the puka might manifest as a shadowy, almost human figure lurking at the edge of vision, its features indistinct but its presence deeply felt. Its character is a perfect reflection of the land it inhabits, capable of sudden, wild mischief but also of unexpected benevolence. The same creature that would lead you on a sleepless ride might also speak prophecies of the future in a haunting, melodic voice, or be found in the early morning light having completed a farmer's neglected chores, its hoof prints the only sign it was ever there. This duality is never predictable, hinging entirely on the puka's own inscrutable whims. Its power reaches its peak during the ancient festival of Samhain, the Celtic New Year and the direct ancestor of our modern Halloween. As the veil between worlds grows thin, the puka is said to be at its most active and its most potent. It was believed that any fruits or berries left on the bush after this night were considered puka-touched, poisoned by the creature and unfit for human consumption, a clear folkloric warning to finish the harvest before the dark of the year truly set in. The puka is in essence the untamed soul of the Irish landscape given form. It represents the wildness that lies just beyond the cottage door, the unpredictable force of nature that can destroy a crop with hail one season and bless it with sun the next. It is a reminder that the world is not safe or tameable, but is alive with a spirit that demands both caution and a measure of respect. Visualize the deep green of the Irish hills shrouded in a low, clinging fog, the narrow country lanes barely visible in the twilight. Picture the sudden appearance of that spectral black steed, its golden eyes cutting through the gloom, and the artistic depictions that capture its fluid, magical form, forever balanced between a helpful guide and a trickster of the night. A river's serene surface can hide a profound sorrow. In the whispering reeds and dark, still waters of Slavic folklore lives the Rusalka, a spirit whose story is a haunting melody of tragedy and vengeance. She is not born a monster, but made one by a cruel fate. The Rusalka is almost always the ghost of a young woman who met a violent, watery end. Often, she was a bride who drowned on the eve of her wedding, whether by accident, suicide, or murder. This untimely death, this severing of life's promise, traps her soul between worlds, forever bound to the waters that claimed her. Her appearance is a chilling reflection of this story. She is a beautiful, pale maiden with long, flowing hair the color of riverweed, her eyes holding a deep, unsettling emptiness. She uses this ethereal beauty as a weapon, luring men to their doom. Sometimes her method is playful seduction, her laughter echoing across the water as she beckons a traveler closer. Other times, it is pure, vengeful malice, a deliberate act of drowning to make others share in the agony of her own suffocating end. This duality is the very core of her legend, a spirit both victim and villain, her violence born from an injustice that was never resolved. Yet this dark portrait is not the only one. In older, pre-Christian traditions, the Rusalki were viewed very differently. They were powerful nature spirits closely tied to the fertility of the land. They were believed to wander through the fields at night, their footsteps causing the dew to fall and the crops to grow tall and strong. In this benevolent role, they were not vengeful ghosts, but vital forces of life and renewal, their connection to water making them essential to the agricultural cycle. This ancient role is remembered in a unique Slavic tradition known as Rusalka Week, which falls in early June. During this time, it was believed the Rusalki would leave their rivers and lakes to dance in the birch forests and fields under the moonlight. Villagers would perform rituals to both honor and appease them, leaving offerings of cloth and embroidered shirts tied to tree branches, hoping to secure their blessing for the harvest and to ensure they would return peacefully to the water without causing mischief. Imagine the visual journey of this legend, from the serene, almost melancholic beauty of a Slavic river at dusk, the very picture of hidden depths. Picture the classical paintings that capture the Rusalka's tragic allure, a pale figure half submerged among the water lilies. Then hear the haunting, lyrical melodies of Antonin Dvorak's opera, which tells the story of a water nymph who falls in love with a human prince, a tale that immortalizes the spirit's longing and her ultimate, heartbreaking separation from the world of men. The Rusalka endures because she is the voice of the river itself, a reminder that beneath a calm surface there can lie a story of profound loss, and that nature's power to give life is forever intertwined with its capacity for tragedy. The dense jungle canopy closes in. The path you swore was there just moments ago now swallowed by thick vines and shadows. This is the domain of the Tikbalang, a creature whose very form is a paradox of the wild. It stands impossibly tall and gaunt, a bony humanoid frame that moves with an unsettling grace, but its head is that of a horse with intelligent, dark eyes and a long muzzle. Its feet are the definitive mark of its nature, the unmistakable hooves of a stallion that make no sound on the soft forest floor. This is no mere monster, it is the forest's master trickster. Its primary delight is in confusion, not carnage. A traveler will hear a familiar voice call their name from the darkness, or see the reassuring figure of a loved one beckoning them forward, only to have the illusion melt away into the grinning, equine face of the Tikbalang. It leads people in maddening circles, making a familiar journey last for days, its silent laughter echoing in the disoriented mind of its victim. The forest itself seems to conspire with it, trees shifting and paths rearranging themselves at its command. Yet the folklore of the Philippines is rich with wisdom for outsmarting this creature. If you find yourself hopelessly lost, the simplest act can break the enchantment: turn your shirt or your clothing inside out. This seemingly nonsensical action is believed to confuse the Tikbalang, disrupting its magical hold on your perception and allowing you to see the true path home. A more respectful approach is to verbally ask for permission to pass, to acknowledge the unseen master of the woods. By showing this deference, you are no longer a trespasser but a guest, and the Tikbalang's power to mislead you is broken. This reveals the creature's deeper role. It is a guardian spirit, a punishing enforcer of the natural order. Those who enter the forest with arrogance, who hack at ancient trees without cause or pollute clear streams, are its prime targets. The Tikbalang is the wilderness pushing back, ensuring that humanity never forgets its place within the ecosystem, not as its conqueror. In this, it finds kinship with other hybrid guardians across the globe. It shares the liminal nature of the Scottish kelpie, a creature of water and land that also protects its domain, and the transformative cunning of the Japanese kappa, another trickster that demands respect and proper etiquette. Visualize the play of light and shadow in a Philippine jungle at dusk, where every twisted vine could be a limb and every distant sound a hoofbeat. Imagine the stark silhouette of the Tikbalang against a moonlit clearing, its horse head tilted in silent mockery. Traditional folk art captures this being in vibrant colors and woven textures, a testament to its enduring presence in the cultural imagination. The Tikbalang is not a demon to be slain, but a reminder that the wild places have their own rules, and that getting lost is sometimes the only way to learn how to truly find your